Hello everybody, welcome into the latest live stream. My name is Kerry Holzman. I want to welcome all of you joining me in the live chat, which, as I realize, it's on this side, isn't it? Well, regardless of that, welcome in, and today we're going to play a little game, and I hope you'll play along with me. There's a lot of misinformation on the old interwebs, and I want to set an example. Let me just get a little closer. You notice that the UPSs are still out. We're not done talking about power. In fact, we'll be following up with this, I think this weekend. I'm gonna get a brand new unit and we're gonna actually see how long the battery life actually is. Now, first of all, everybody can see and hear me okay in the chat there? Rosemary says yes. Very good, very good. All right, I see Colin Hilton, one of our generous supporters to the channel, has joined us. He's a moderator, as is Rusty Shackelford and Ben DeCure, Patrick Manny, Superman G. These are the folks that are going to help keep things civil in the chat room. And I had a little issue yesterday with somebody insisting on challenging me despite my numerous attempts asking them to stop. They've been banned. They can watch the videos. They can no longer participate. Some folks, I just want to get this out of the way right up front. Some folks think they're entitled to their opinion in my channel, and with respect, that's absolutely welcome. However, when you're challenging me, you can go do that somewhere else, not on my channel. My channel is open to everybody as a gift from me to you. But the minute you abuse that gift, it will be denied from you. So I just want to put that out there. Just common sense, folks. Just treat people the way you want to be treated. And if you think that you don't like the way I do things, I don't know why you're watching. So anyway, we're not going to have a repeat of the unnecessary distraction from yesterday from a particular lonely person with apparent mental problems. So I'll count on my moderators today to be, I can't believe not a single moderator, despite seeing what I was doing, none of my moderators did anything about this person. So I would appreciate if my moderators were a little too aggressive and now they're not being assertive enough. So hopefully today everybody will be good. And as we block out the troublemakers, we'll just be left with a community that supports each other and you know, is part of a real, honest community. And, you know, here on the internet, there's a lot of misinformation. You know, Google's a great resource if you want to look up facts. If you want to know what year Abraham Lincoln was born, it's very easy to verify that information at numerous websites. But unfortunately, the internet is filled with a lot of opinions disguised as facts. And that's why I make the videos I make, demonstrating live the actual results. And for anybody who doesn't like those results, I encourage you to replicate the test yourself. And for the rest of us, it's just interesting because we know nothing's being manipulated. I don't have the budget for CGI or fancy editing during a live broadcast or even after a live broadcast. So I was just as curious as much as anybody else. There's a lot of misinformation on the internet with regards to how much power a computer needs to run. Now, I brought a good friend and journalist, tech journalist, on my show numerous times. His name is George O. And we've specifically talked about the overestimates that is often disguised as fact when it comes to how much power a computer needs when picking a power supply. And so today we want to just get down and dirty about what is the reality, how much power do you actually need to have. And so based on that, I'd like to know here in the chat room right now, I would like to know if you, let me try this again. I started wrong. Edit. Can't do that on a live broadcast. I want to know how much power do you think old Thready here consumes? How power hungry is Thready? So we've got a Ryzen Threadripper, the 1950X. This is going to be the most power hungry chip AMD currently offers. And we've got a device here. This is called a kilowatt. And this is going to measure actual power consumption that's being sucked out of the wall second by second. Now, there's no faking this. I don't have a dog in the race, so it doesn't matter to me if it uses a whole much more than I thought or a lot less than I presumed. But I want to use this as a lesson. So right now, I want you guys to tell me how much power you believe this machine, let's back it up one step. How much power, I gotta think of the right way to phrase my question. We can phrase it one of two ways. One is, how much power do you think Thready here actually needs with this configuration? Or, what size power supply would you recommend? Let's start with that, because that's often a question that gets asked and answered incorrectly online more times than it's answered correctly. So, what I want to know from you is, what size power supply should I have put in Thready? Based on, let's just say we're never going to do an upgrade. We're never going to add another video card. If you want to add hard drives, it won't make a difference. So they're not, the only power hungry thing you can really add here is a video card. If you're not doing that, you can add anything else. The power supply's difference is going to be negligible. So when I was first configuring Thready, I put a 650 watt power supply in there, and I was advised by many people to go to 750. That 650 would not be enough with the Vega 64 card. And I personally thought 650 would be way more than I needed, by at least 200 watts. That was my feeling. I said it then, I'm saying it again. But I could be wrong. And it turned out there was a rebate on the 750 watt Seasonic power supply that either made it the same price or actually a little less than the 650 watt. Now, there's no harm really in going with a larger power supply than you need, other than it sucks money out of your wallet that could be used for something you can actually benefit from. So place your bets, and we're about to find out very, very soon exactly how much power gets drawn from the wall. Out of curiosity, how much power, sorry, I have to grab my Coke. Class, how much power does Thready use when idle? How much power does Thready use when turned off? And how much power maximum will Thready ever pull under a heavy load? So we got 3 different power ratings. So put down idle. What do you think? Give me a power range. How many watts do you think Thready will use sitting idle at the desktop doing nothing? How many watts does the computer use when it's off? And by off, I mean it's plugged in, the power supply switch is on, but the computer is turned off. Does it draw any power? How much, if so? And finally, under the heaviest load we can throw on top of Thready, how thirsty is that going to make Thready? Give me a range. Now, I'm about to prove most of you wrong, which is why you shouldn't be giving power advice out to people. This is the lesson you're going to learn firsthand today. This is going to look like an ad, but I got something in the mail today. That's one of my favorite things in the world, right here. Fresh from London. These are Walker's Smoky Bacon flavored potato chips, or crisps as the British call them. You get these on eBay. I get this bag for $5. I don't even know how they can afford to put it in a box and ship it to me for $5. Inside, Americans are going to be blown away by this because they think this is a big bag of, a normal size bag of American size bag of chips. No. There's 6 little bags in here, and these are like vending machine size bags that we might find here in America. Oh my God, these are so good. These are so good. Look at these. I should be getting an endorsement from Walker's. This is just wrong. It's wrong to make something that tastes so freaking delicious and to not sell it in America. It's not right. Oh, these are so good. I gotta put these down. All right. I'll put you right there. I gotta go back to that bag. Focus. Self-control. Self-control. Oh my God, that's good. It's been months since I've had those. Takes about 2 weeks for them to arrive from England. Totally worth the wait. So, I just put this up here for the sake of, you know what, let's just keep it there just so everybody knows, if you're just tuning in, we are testing the power consumption of Ryzen. This is a kilowatt power meter. I've got a link in the video notes below this video where you can buy these. It's going to Amazon. There's several made. This one was the cheapest one when I bought it about a year ago, and it's been sitting on a shelf waiting for this project. I've got a number of things that have not been opened yet. This is why, you know, people say, would you make a video about this, make a video about, I have a list of videos I'm trying to make and have been trying to make for a very long time, so I don't need any video ideas. I finally got this opened last night after it's been sitting on the shelf for a year, and I was surprised to learn that they actually have another manufacturer that sells these for under $20 now. It doesn't matter which one you buy. They're all basically accurate within 0.2%, like 1/5 of 1%. That's accurate enough. We can read a bunch of different information on this from, if it'll focus, you'll see here. Let's give it a second to focus. Okay, doesn't want to focus. Well, we're going to see everything by pushing these buttons. We can see volts, amps, watts, kilowatt hours used, and some of the buttons you can press them again and all fluctuate the information from power factor to the hertz. We're at 60 hertz here in America. And with regards to some of the questions I couldn't answer yesterday regarding the sine wave version of these UPSs and what joules means, those questions were addressed and answered in the video description. I just did a little Google searching, which, by the way, any of you could have done. These are facts and not opinions, so you could easily verify the information you were Googling was in fact accurate. But to save you a little time and the effort of pushing a few buttons and clicking your mouse, because I know how difficult that can be, I've provided that information in yesterday's live video, in the video notes. So if you're curious about that, be sure and check it out. The other thing I've done is I set another camera up over here. You often see me plug things in off to the side here. And you probably wonder what that looks like over there. It's just a side of a counter, but let's see if we can get that activated. Let's see if I can put that down in the corner. Let's see. There we go. All right, so that, whoops. That's the wall outlet. And we're just going to plug this in to the wall right there, okay? You with me? And then we're going to take the power cable that runs the Thready. This is the HDMI cable that's going into the capture card. And this is the keyboard. And then there's a USB mouse, wireless mouse dongle in there. We're going to go ahead and plug this right in here. Now you can use this for all kinds of applications. You can use it certainly to save some money on your electric bill, and when you see what the power consumption is on a device, and control that with a bit more control. Can everybody see that okay? Is it in focus? Is it clear? Let me step around. Geekazoid Tech has contributed $20. Thank you, Geekazoid. He says, Carrie, I support you, man, from Tucson. You are a great friend. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Hopefully, we'll be able to see this. Now, I've said this before, I'll say it again. You guys are going to be my computer monitor. There's no monitor here for me to, I got it plugged into the capture card. So when I turn this on, the only way I'm going to be able to see what's on the screen is by sending it to your screen at the same time. So you are all 332 of you, going to be my computer monitor, and we'll just make sure it's over here. Where is it? It's over. We'll make sure to keep that box down there so everything's so backwards. All right, let's get this fired up. Lights are coming on, and let's go to, is it this one? I think it's this one. Or is it this one? There it is. All right, very good. So you should be able to still hear me okay. And let's wait for the desktop to come up. In fact, I could probably put myself on here too, right? Maybe? Hold on, let me just, oh, I did this the wrong way. I see what I did. Hold on, give me a second, because I am still familiarizing myself with the capabilities. I'm getting dangerous with this capture card here. Let's see. I should be able to do this. And I should be able to do this. Ah, look at that. Now, can everybody see the power consumption right now? Anybody tell me what that says? Jean-Francois Pelgram says, contributed €3, says, thanks for the videos that you make for us. Thank you. Thank you, Jean-Francois. Boy, it's really, really dark. I don't know if you can read that. Can you guys read it? I need some light on it. I wonder if I can get a light on. I know this camera has a light, but I've never activated it. Let's see. Function. Exposure. No, that doesn't seem to be helping. No, I know it's in here somewhere. Audio, zoom, faders, snapshot. Come on. Menu. I wish they just gave me a button for the light. I've got to go into the menuing section. I don't know where it is. This is why they make documentation. I don't know where the light is. Well, we can turn the backlight on. That looks a little better with the backlight on, I guess. Can you guys see that better? Maybe I'll just zoom in on it more. Let's go up. It still seems a little bit dark. Let's see if we can. Let's try something else. If I could just figure out how to turn the freaking light on. I can't remember how to do it. Okay. I think I still need more light, so I'm gonna just go old school since I can't figure out how to turn the light on. We'll just do this. We're just gonna go old school. All right. So here's what I'm gonna do now. We're gonna restart the system. And I want you to watch the voltage consumption as the system boots. We're going to go start and restart. So everything, what's great about filming live is I don't have to worry about syncing everything. It's all going to be synced automatically since we're all live here. Well, it looks like I'm drawing current. That's the wrong number. I want watts. That's hertz. Okay, here's our wattage. Sorry. Now we're looking at actual wattage. Now you can see when the system is off, we're drawing 4 watts at all times. This is why you never work on a computer that's plugged in. It's not actually off. The same is true with any modern electronic device, such as a television. It's able to come on a lot faster because there's current flowing through it, a very tiny amount. It costs you pennies a year. But watch the power meter when I flip the switch on the power supply to off. You see that? Now we're drawing 0 current. I realize that means 3 in some countries. We're drawing 0 current right now. Flip the switch to on, even though the system is off, 4 watts are moving through the system. Now think about this. If you can start a power supply by shorting 2 jumpers on the motherboard, how is that possible unless current is flowing through the board? Before ATX, we had AT. And AT was a physical hard switch that would click, click, on, off, that was wired directly to the power supply. Whether or not the power supply was plugged into the motherboard didn't matter. You were turning the power supply on and off. Modern computers don't work like that. The power supply is hooked into the circuitry of the motherboard, and those two have to talk, and they can only talk if they have a minimum amount of power. And when you short out the 2 pins on the motherboard, it says to the power supply, I want you to turn on or I want you to turn off, even though the switch is not directly hooked to your power supply. Have you ever thought of that? Your power switch on your case, power switch up here, is not hooked up. Did you run a cable to your power supply from your power switch? Because in the AT days, that's how it used to work. So how does the motherboard tell the power supply to turn on or turn off? It does it with electricity. So when the system is off, it's currently drawing about 4 watts of power. Once again, if you were to swap out RAM right now or pull a video card out, you could get a large spark. You could cause a short circuit. You could damage your system. So I want you to keep that in mind. Now I want you to pay close attention as I turn the machine on. Watch the power fluctuation of the meter. And again, can't fake this. And I would have no motivation to do so even if I could, because what am I, selling power supplies? I mean, what do I care? What I do care about is truth. We're at the desktop and we're idling about 120 watts. Now, I've done some experimentation with this last night and found you can browse the web, check your email, extract zip files. You pretty much stay right around 150 watts the whole time, the whole freaking time. So then I thought, well, what can I do to really push it? And I thought, well, I'll run the Heaven benchmark, right? I mean, I've run the Heaven benchmark before. You've seen me run that. So let's run it now. And let's see, because people say, oh, you know, that video card, that's going to draw a lot of power. And, you know, modern computers use less power today than computers did 10 or 20 years ago. It's part of the evolution of technology. This idea that you need more power today than you did when you had a 486 computer is backwards. It's just not the way it works. We're hitting about 430 watts right now benchmarking. 430 watts. Now again, how many of you guessed a maximum of 430 watts? You think a 650 watt power supply would have been enough? But this isn't pushing the system as hard as we could push it. We can push it harder. So, would a 500 watt power supply, would that be enough? What you have to understand about power and the way that the computer uses it is it may spike up momentarily. So you've got to keep your eye on that little wattage meter. You see we're back down to 117 because I've canceled. I've stopped this momentarily because I want to start a different benchmark. This is the latest 3D Mark benchmark. These benchmarks are all free. You're welcome to download these and run them on your system and see how they compare. I was curious because this is a DirectX 12 test. And I don't think any of the other benchmarks are running DirectX 12. I could be wrong, but this is the latest from 3D Mark. This is the free version. So the free version, I think I don't know if you can force it into the benchmark or not. I can't remember now. Watch the power consumption on this regardless. We're still idling. It's loading about 200 watts, 116 watts. And keep in mind that this is strongly drawing from the graphics card. And watch the peak wattage consumption on the meter. Now, in my opinion, the way I pick a power supply for a customer is I determine what the maximum wattage will be on that configuration, and I add 100 watts to it for overhead. You never want a power supply working at its maximum, or you're going to wear the power supply out. It's going to get hot, the fan's going to run all the time. But you don't want a power supply so big that it's expensive and inefficient. Just keep an eye on it, because it will jump. If you blink, you might miss it. And when it jumps, your power supply needs to be able to provide that amount of power for that brief moment. How much do you think it's going to jump to? And notice how the power consumption goes down depending on how much work the graphics card has to do. And can you tell by looking at the screen when the graphics card is working half as hard? No, you can't. I can't. I can't tell what's making the graphics card work harder in some scenes than in other scenes. Look at how much it's fluctuated between 450 and 200. It's constant. So primarily, under normal idle circumstances, you're going to see a regular 300 watt or less consumption. But if you were to really utilize the system and push it, then you're going to obviously have serious issues on a 300 watt power supply with this configuration. Now with a different configuration, maybe an Intel Celeron and a NUC, you get away with 200 watts. This is the point I'm trying to make because I'm so sick and tired of people from 1994 jumping in to forum discussion groups and telling people information from 1994 because that's what they learned 23 years ago. Or no, I guess it's been, how long is that? 1994, 2000, 24 years ago? That's close. And this is the biggest problem with the tech information provided by people online. It looks like my flashlight might be dying. See if I can get another light in there. Yeah, it's tough. Flashlights get hot. And we're going to take a look at the end result of the benchmark, just for those of you who are curious what the end result is. The only reason why you would want a bigger power supply is if you were planning to upgrade to a dual video card or a bigger, more powerful video card, and you didn't want to have to also purchase a power supply at that time. Otherwise, buy for what you need today. I will say that graphics cards continue to come down in price and become more powerful and use less power as they evolve. So if you don't know when you're gonna get another video card, if it's at some point in the future, power supplies mostly stay the same price, unless there's a really good deal on a power supply that's much bigger than you need, and it just happens to have a rebate or be on sale. I would say otherwise, get what you need. It's okay to have 100, 200 watts overhead. Certainly, I'd recommend a minimum of 100 watts overhead. But remember, we're talking overhead from maximum possible consumption. So we're looking right now, we're back at 140 watts. You'll see it's going to sit around well under 200 in most of the time, and then it temporarily ramps up as it needs to. Think about when you drive your car. When you drive your car, do you always put your foot down to the floor and drive it flat out? Probably not, because you'd probably be dead or not have a car. You do have to slow down for turns, other traffic, signals, lights, intersections. So for the most part, you're going to drive your car at a reasonable speed most of the time. And when you need to pass somebody or you have a momentary area of space where you can goose it, then you will, and you'll get a little thrill out of it. Unless you're on a racetrack, that's the way most of us drive. Some people don't even do that. I like having the power of my Mustang, but I rarely use it. Sometimes there'll be somebody very slow in front of me on the freeway. I get sick and tired of following them, and when I have an opportunity to pass them, I will. And on a rare occasion, they decide they don't want to be passed. And with the Mustang, unless they're in another Mustang or a Camaro or another muscle car or a really nice sports luxury car like a Mercedes or BMW, which most of the cars on the roads here in Phoenix are not, they don't stand a chance. And I kind of chuckle to myself and shake my head why they even thought they could try. That's when it's good to have the power. And as such, having a very powerful power supply is useful in those little instances where you need that little boost. So right now, our end result, I didn't want to run anything else at the same time because I wanted to see what our score would be. So we're at 7,288. And I gotta come over here and see, it's too far away. How does that compare? Sorry guys, give me just a second here. I'm having a hard time seeing the screen. Let me I have to move this over because I can't. My other windows are blocking it. So we can show details. Can we? Where is it? You don't want to validate. Show details is not working. Okay. Sterling 3371's contributed $10. Says, I've been in the hospital with shingles the last 2 days, and rewatching your old streams along with today's stream helped me keep my sanity. Thanks, Carrie. Have a beer on me. Well, thank you, Sterling. I think I will. I cannot see the screen. I know it's in here somewhere. How does my system compare to others? Hardware monitor graphs, upgrade. Hold on, I've got to turn this temporarily off so I can see. Validate and compare results online. Oh, I'm not online. I haven't plugged it into the network. My bad. All right, well, basically it performs very, very well. When it pulls up the results, it's higher than the results of, I think it says it performs somewhere around 80% better than, in general, over all systems that are participating in this test, which isn't surprising to me. Could we get better? Probably. And this flashlight is now dying. I really need to figure out how this light comes on. It's really annoying. Do I have the ability, maybe? Where is that light? You know, after today's broadcast, I'm going to find that light. The problem is I own several different cameras, and how the light activates varies depending on which camera, and that's why it's so hard for me to remember. Anyway, now, what have you said? What if we really push the system as hard as we can push it? What's the most we can draw from it? Well, let's give it a shot. I'm game. Again, I got to turn this off temporarily, and I'm going to turn that one off temporarily so I can see the screen. And let's go back to this right here. Let's bring up Prime 95. Now, Prime 95 is really going to work the system, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run, actually, let's close this. Let's run Prime 95, and we're just going to click OK here, and pay attention to this power meter. You're also going to hear the system get loud because it's going to heat up. It's working very, very hard. Let's see if my batteries have cooled down and this light will work again. So that's all 32 threads at 100%. We're only drawing 250 watts. Are you understanding this yet? Now, let's also run the Heaven benchmark at the same time. And I'm going to turn this, see, when I have video overlays, it's very hard for me to see what's going on behind them. So let's run Heaven benchmark. Well, Prime 95 is running at the same time. Let's see what we can get our power consumption up to. Another $5 from Geekazoid Tech. Thank you, Dan. There's probably more we can make the system do, but we're going to run these two tasks right now. We're at 273 watts of power. And let's hit the benchmark, which is F9. So we're really pressing the system hard. Still only drawing about 300 watts. And yeah, we're still right around 300 watts. I still have a dying flashlight though. Bob Barnes has contributed £5 and says, "This is very eye-opening. Thanks for sharing, Carrie." Thank you, Bob. You see, no matter what I do to prove this, there's always going to be somebody who goes, "Well, try this and try this. Why don't you get a Kilowatt machine for 20 bucks on Amazon and you try it any way you want? You can stay up for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and try and figure this out, where you can justify a 750 watt power supply for this configuration." I would challenge any of you that cannot accept this to see it and experiment with it for yourself, because there's no point in arguing about it. And the reality is, the best thing to do is to just simply use your system as you normally would. I've talked about this before. Benchmarks are primarily pointless. They can give you a concept or an idea of what to expect, but the ultimate reality depends on how you use your system. So if we have a bunch of tabs open and we might be rendering a video in the background and things like that, obviously our results are going to be a bit different. Let's go and let's quit that. And while Prime 95 is running, let's run something else. Let's run, let's keep that open. Let's run 3D Mark with Prime 95 running. Oops. Close that. You'll see Prime 95 is down here in the corner. It's still running. And you know it's running because you can hear the fans behind me. Let's bring up 3D Mark. Nothing on the system is overclocked. However, modern CPUs overclock themselves as necessary. They turbo is what they call it. When you start overclocking, you draw more power. There's certainly no secret to that. How far you want to overclock and what your silicon lottery provides you on your specific chip will vary, and how you get to certain reliable or stable overclocks may depend on more power consumption, which creates more heat, and it's going to cost you more money. Your cost per megahertz, what you're paying out of the wall outlet, so you can feel like you're better than everybody else because you're getting a few more megahertz, it's not a deal. I mean, clearly, if you have a lot of money to spend, you can go faster than somebody with less money, generally speaking. This is true in car racing. When a race car driver says, "We want to go faster," or the sponsor in car racing, the sponsor says, "We want you to win. What's it going to take for you to go faster?" The answer is always the same: give us more money. And obviously, sponsors have a limit to how much they can spend. So we have these limitations based on diminishing returns. You spend a certain amount of money and you get a certain amount back. But as you continue to spend, you get little and little and little and little and little more back. So, you know, to get a car from 100 miles an hour to 200 miles an hour, you got to spend about this much. To get a car from 200 to 250, you have to spend about this much. And to get a car from 250 to 300, it's off the screen. So it's very, very expensive. But, you know, with the money, things become possible. Anybody can buy themselves accolades. You can buy a diploma online, but it doesn't make you smarter than anybody else. In fact, it might just do the opposite, unless you're the guy selling the diplomas. But the fact of the matter is, the reality of how much power the average system uses, even a high-end system with 32 gigs, is it 32 or 64? 8, 16, 24, 30. It's 32 gigs of RAM. The biggest processor AMD offers, both literally and figuratively, in size and power consumption. The storage are 3 M.2 NVMe drives, 500 gigs apiece. They're Samsung 960 EVOs in a RAID 0 configuration, representing one C drive of 1.5 terabytes in size with read speeds of about 6,000 megabytes per second. It is fast, fast, fast. Those 3 NVMe 500 gig M.2 drives were $200 a piece. And you can watch the video of me building the system. I went outside the backyard. A friend and a fan, going both ways actually. Mitch worked as the cameraman to help me keep the flow moving on that video. If you haven't watched it, I strongly encourage that you do. Now you'll see 3D Mark is taking quite a long time to load because Prime 95 is taking priority, but we're going to get there. GPU will get there. It's just got to load the configuration. It's going to take just a minute. You do have to be patient. Once again, I'm losing my light. Tell you what, while it's doing that, let me grab another light. Now, I don't know how many of you would ever in reality, ooh, that light's almost too bright. I went from one extreme to another. Let's try that. I don't know how many of you in reality would ever push a system this hard for this long. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody who has a legitimate reason to do it outside of just curiosity and testing. But curiosity and testing have little to do with reality and are mostly meaningless and a complete waste of time. It might be interesting to just wonder how things work under stress, but how that benefits you or anybody else, unless you're an engineer, just seems like some mild form of bizarre entertainment. I still see people in the chat room talking about free speech. I want to make it clear, when you're in a public place, if you're at a public park, you have a right to free speech. This is not a public channel. This is my channel, and I invite you in as my guest. If you disrespect me, then you don't follow the rules. And this goes for Disneyland or any other private property, Walmart, any shop, any independently owned business. If you disrespect, you will be asked to leave. If you don't leave, you will be arrested for trespassing in reality, not in the virtual world, but in reality. You can certainly read enough stories about people kicked out of Starbucks recently for not leaving when they were asked to. That becomes trespassing. If you don't follow the rules here that I've invited you in my channel and you disrespect that, you will be removed and blocked permanently. So please, play nice. There is nothing for you to win. You aren't proving anything other than you want to get kicked out. So either exercise your self-control or we'll exercise it for you. We're all very friendly here and kind to each other. We're not here to challenge one another. There's plenty of other YouTube channels where you can do that, or go make your own. That's where your free speech is. It's on your channel, not on mine. And for my admins, if anybody continues to do that, you have my blessing to warn them once, and if they continue, permanently ban them. We'll never deal with them again. So right now, Prime 95 and 3D Mark are running together simultaneously, and you can see we're hitting about 400 watts. Now last night when I did this, I saw a brief spike to 559. Very briefly, it was like 559. It happened so fast, you'd almost miss it. So a 500 watt power supply would not have been enough for this system in the instant that it needed it. And that's where you would end up with a strange blue screen error, or perhaps a restart, or just bizarre, unpredictable computer behavior. And some people will think it's a Windows update or a driver when in fact they have a power supply that's too small. But I will say, having a power supply that is too small is pretty rare these days. If you bought a quality 80 plus power supply from a well-known manufacturer, and you've got an average ordinary system that most people have, you will probably never encounter any power problems. The people who encounter power problems are the people who ask for power problems. I want to make sure we're clear on this. The people who overclock the system and push it beyond the engineering design, who break those borders of how it was intended to be run, will then suffer the consequences of pushing it beyond those limits. Now, to succeed beyond that, for some nerds, and I'm going to say nerds in a friendly way, is bragging rights. For people in the working world, it's a complete and utter waste of time, because we know a faster chip will come out in 18 months that will smoke your chip that you've overclocked and struggled so hard to get stable, and it'll do it cool, it'll do it quiet, and it'll do it without anything but plug and play. So your success is only temporary when it comes to this. There's always faster hardware coming out very, very soon. If computers were not evolving, if we were still mostly using the same equipment year after year after year, that sort of effort would make sense. But I think people who do that have far too much money and far too much time. You know, there's criticisms from people sometimes and equipment that I throw away, or, oh, look at that, we're hitting over 600 watts right now. Equipment that I will dispose of, that people will say, well, you could have donated that. Well, you could have taken the money you spent on your overclock and gave it to feed somebody. So it works both ways. That's the biggest number I have seen, 623 watts. So still a 650 watt power supply would work, but it wouldn't be advised. Because what's going to happen with a 650 watt power supply is it's going to run really, really hot and work really, really hard. Your system's not going to crash, but your power supply life, if you run it like this regularly, is going to be reduced. You know, this is a test just to see how much power we can possibly draw. That's all we're trying to do. There is no overclocking, but remember, this chip will overclock itself. It's called turbo. And when it can, and when it's needed, it will put the pedal to the metal. Scooby wants to know what power supply. It's a Seasonic 750 watt prime. Carl Curtin has contributed €5. He says, thank you for giving me the confidence to start handing out my business cards a couple of weeks ago. Very good. Good for you. Rurutu says, this is a 16-core chip. It will draw the power. Only if you request it. Many people have very powerful systems and barely use them. You see all of these sport utility vehicles, four-wheel drive vehicles on the road. Certainly here in America, and they've never ever been off-road. People have some of the most capable Land Rovers, Jeeps, and other very durable four-wheel drive rugged vehicles that never go off-road. They pick the kids up and drop the kids off to soccer practice, to school, they go grocery shopping. In much the same way, many people have very powerful computers, but they never really push them. Some do, but they're the minority. So you can see how that's affected our score, 5908, but I'm sure there are people out there that can run this test without Prime 95 running and not even get a score that high. Now, an NVIDIA graphics card like a 1080 Ti Titan, that's obviously going to perform better. Sort of the weak point in the system, in my opinion, is the graphics card. But because I never use AMD graphics cards, I wanted to step outside of the box and do something different. and try to give you a first-hand example of why I don't choose these parts for my clients. For what you get for the money, I think there's a much better value to be had with the NVIDIA graphics cards. All right, we're going to stop the workers. Actually, you know what? Before I do that, let's take a look at what our heat numbers look like. Let's run hardware monitor, and let's bring up, see what the temps look like here. I was reluctant to purchase this Enermax CPU cooler, liquid cooler, because I've had some bad history with Enermax and their power supplies, but that was quite a long time ago. Look at those temps. Look at these temps. Maximum temps during all that work. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the test and watch the temps. Oops, I guess I got to go over here and click OK. Watch how quick the temps and the volume go down. I'm leaning into the computer so you can hear it. I can feel the heat coming off of it right here. It's cooled down awfully quick. So it's a very, very good cooler. And it can get a bit loud, but getting loud is working. It's it's drawing that heat off of that CPU and keeping it well in the range that it should be running in. Wilkins Rojas has contributed $5 and says, your videos have helped me build and respect my hardware more. Thank you for all your content. Well, thank you, Wilkins, and I'm happy to hear you've built your own computer. I doubt you'll never go to a pre-built system again. When you want it done right, you have to do it yourself. Now, I gotta turn this camera off for a moment. I can't see my screen. And I don't know what other test we can put on here. We've pretty much run it all, I think. Oh, Cinebench. Let's try Cinebench and let's see what sort of numbers we get on those tests, right? Everybody likes Cinebench. Well, not everybody. Some people like Cinebench. Watch the power usage here when the Cinebench tests. Right now we're running the OpenGL test on Cinebench. Are you surprised by those numbers? Boom, there's our result. And then let's run the CPU test. How many watts do you think that's going to consume? And that's done. And that's it. That's all there is. So this idea, this concept of requiring a lot of power, and honestly, you could say, well, it's a good thing that you've got the 750 watt because you were hitting that 640 watts on your Max. But my 650 watt power supply I was going to go with originally would have been just adequate, no problem. Because the only time it would have ever have hit that number would be when I'm testing it to show you guys. It would never happen in reality. Now I still have to go through the process of putting the editing software on it, but I don't want to do that until I have the rest of the system finished. And I don't want to do that until I make a video and share that with you guys. And I don't want to do that until I finish up talking about UPSs. Now, There's a lot of projects that still have to be done, a lot of videos that still have to be completed before we get there. And of course, we have the naming ceremony where we're going to put everybody who's contributed to make this system and this series of videos possible. We want to make sure all of those viewers get the credit that they deserve, because without them, this video, the previous video, all this picture-in-picture stuff you're seeing, this has all been provided not from the generosity of YouTube and the money that they make from these videos, because YouTube's making about the same amount of money I am. They're basically taking 50, it's close enough to call it 50%. As a result, the money is not enough to live off of, let alone go spending on hardware that I don't need. This was an example of what you'll often see on other YouTube tech channels, which is enthusiast, irresponsible, impractical builds that really serve no purpose other than because we can. I've never done that ever in a video. And it is fun. I did enjoy it. I still enjoy it. And it's very interesting. But I will tell you, in the world of business, this is a complete waste of time that's interfering with making money and helping customers. And that's where I hope you differentiate my videos from those of enthusiasts. And while enthusiasts do have a passion for the technology, they are not held accountable, they are not held responsible, and they are not held liable for the things that they do. As a result, they can do all kinds of strange, bizarre, impractical things that cost way too much money just because they want to see what happens. And while that's great for entertainment, it doesn't really educate you or make you a better technician or make you better prepared to be a technician. It's interesting and it's entertaining, but so is Star Wars. And they have about the same educational value. Now, with that said, it's fun. And I mean, if you want to do something for fun, it doesn't have to make sense. But what frustrates me is these YouTube tech channels, that's all they do is fun. They don't actually take care of any serious business. And by serious business, I mean, they don't actually get paid to fix something. And then when it doesn't work weeks, months, or years later, be called back and have to address that problem. And you will see that on my channel. You saw the Cosmos 2 system come back 5 years after it was built, right? I built Cosmos 2 in 2013. It came back in 2018 with a water pump that died. Why did it come back to me? Because I'm held accountable. I didn't do it for free, and I want the customer to call me. I want to be held accountable. I want the customer to come back again. That's how you keep a business in business. You see, we're idling, right? A little over 100 watts. And so your computer most of the time is going to idle. For most people, and you guys may not want to hear this, but you're the slow part. You're the part that needs to be overclocked. Computers have reached a point in evolution where the computer's waiting on you. And the computer's extraordinarily patient to wait on slow human beings. But what bothers me is technology is supposed to be there to help you. You should not determine your self-worth based on the benchmark numbers of your computer. You should not be upset by it, nor should you, in my opinion, work towards a goal of waiting for the computer to give you the approval you so seek. That sounds a lot like you're a slave to the computer. It sounds very dystopian. It sounds like asking a computer for permission. It's very strange to see this obsession with a number to make you feel good about yourself coming from a computer. It's supposed to be the other way around. Let's shut this down. And let's go back to full screen on camera one. There we go. Very good. Very good. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this little experiment to end the arguments and end the debate. Just because a computer can hit 650 watts for a brief moment, yes, it does justify having at least a 650 watt power supply if you would ever plan to do that. Otherwise, in that brief moment when you required that massive amount of power, you would have experienced a shutdown and you'd have to go through a diagnostic process. But this is about as high-end as you can go right now with regards to systems. I mean, Intel's got their competitor to it, of course, the i9. But that's pretty much the most of what you're looking at until you start running dual video cards, or triple or quad, right? So I just want you to be reasonable. Looks like we missed a couple donations. Let's see if we can go back and take a look at what I missed here. Apologize for that. Let's see what we got going on here. Flamingo Lane has contributed $5. I don't know what the A is. I don't think it's Australia. What is the A? I learn something new every time I watch your videos. Thank you, Carrie. Well, thank you, Flamingo Lane. One random person has contributed 50, I think that's Norwegian kroner. Krona, it probably doesn't matter, but any video converter is a free video converter program that stresses the CPU harder than Ada 64. Okay, I don't want to load the system down with a bunch of software where I then question its reliability when I want it to do actual work. So I'm trying to be very cautious with how much benchmark software I throw on it, because at a certain point, I'm going to have to completely wipe it and reinstall it if I plan on using it to work. So I'm going to kind of hold off on that for right now. There's a number of different benchmarks, but I have to remind you, these benchmarks are completely pointless. Unless you're benchmarking just to burn in and test the reliability of the system, that's one thing. But if you're benchmarking to get numbers, you're wasting your time and looking for approval from a computer. And I'm suggesting you find that approval that you seek from within you. Don't expect or depend on a computer to provide a sense of accomplishment. The best benchmark in the world is for you to use the computer, or for your customer to use the computer, and to see if it meets their needs and expectations for the budget and the price that they paid. That's the only benchmark that matters. I want to remind everybody, remind you, I haven't told you this yet. Coming up very, very soon, I don't have a button to push. Hold on, I gotta find a button to push. Tomorrow, at about 4 o'clock Pacific time, we're gonna do this. Yes, version 2.0 of Drunk Tech Support. So the way Drunk Tech Support works is we'll take calls from people with computer problems, which could be made up. We're going to give them the most irresponsible, dumbest, funniest answers to just laugh and joke and have a good time as we drink and become silly. The sad reality is that for much of the free technical support offered on the internet, it's about the same level of quality. So if you can't beat them, join them. So tomorrow, approximately 4 o'clock Pacific time, could run a little late, could run at 5. I'm not sure when we're going to get started yet. We're going to run version 2.0 of free Drunk Tech Support. My sister will be joining me because she thinks she's funnier than me. We'll just see about that, won't we? So again, it's all just for fun. Do not follow any of the advice that will be offered. It will be some of the worst advice you've ever heard. This is a show intended for adults, therefore it will be on in the evening. Try and keep the language to a minimum. I don't normally show drinking on my channel, not that there's anything wrong with it. I don't want kids to think being an adult means drinking. So if you drink now, it's just like you're an adult. It's a bad message to send. On the other hand, I am an adult and I'm entitled to have a drink now and again. So I'm trying to find that balance on my channel to appease everybody. And it's an impossible task. Obviously, there's always going to be somebody who doesn't like something. But you'll see the content varies a lot, from Subaru engine repair, transmission work. For a while, there's some gun videos, arcade machines and gaming, builds, repairs, and upgrades of computers. And I always try and keep the humor in it. Spill-proof keyboards, data destruction, all of that is lots of topics. So if you find a video on my channel that you don't like, you can thumbs down it, that's fine. Just don't move on to another video. I'm sure there'll be another video, many other videos that you will find appealing. And please respect that just because you don't like it doesn't mean nobody likes it. And just respect your fellow person. And I would suggest you would encourage me to continue to experiment with content. And we'll find something that will, sort of break the ceiling, if you will. Nothing I've done has gone viral or anything like that, but maybe someday, maybe someday. As long as I keep playing around, I don't want to keep doing the same thing, otherwise why would you keep watching? And if what I do evokes any kind of a response from you of love or hatred, I've done my job. I really want to evoke thought. What I don't want to invoke is somebody challenging me in a public forum or trying to publicly humiliate me. That will result in your ban for life. So let's all be friends, let's all get along, and let's all respect one another and our differences of opinions and what we like and dislike, and take what you like and leave the rest. That's what I recommend. Any questions before we wrap it up? This will be the time to ask. Do shots of tequila. No, I'm thinking, I went to the store the other day, and I have to thank my Scottish friends. I didn't really think I liked Scotch, so I never tried it. And they sent me that little taster bottle, and I liked it so much I had to go and get a full-size bottle. I was so shocked when I saw the price. I was at a store here in Arizona called AJ's, and AJ's is a kind of a Whole Foods, kind of an expensive place to go. And they wanted $56 for that bottle, which I thought was more than I thought it should be. And then we have another chain of stores here called Total Wine, and they have beers and wine and spirits from all over the world, a huge selection, literally tens of thousands of different bottles, cans of all different sorts of mixers, alcohol, malts, everything. So they had it for $20 less, actually $22 less than AJ's. I mean, I knew AJ's was more money, but I didn't think they would be almost twice the price. So once again, it gets to that mindset of, hey, if somebody wants to give us $22 more than what everybody else is selling it for, we'll take their money. AJ's will tell you that they have informed employees who can answer all your questions, which most grocery stores do not have. But I already knew what I wanted. I didn't have any questions, and so that would not benefit me to pay the extra money for a service I didn't need to have. The AJ's butcher counter even has bones for the dogs alongside all of the meats and chicken and custom items that they make in store in the butcher area. I've never seen a butcher section with dog bones sold by the pound, which is obviously from the butcher. I kind of like that. I think it's cool. A name I can't pronounce in Bulgaria says you get that same bottle for 26 bucks from the local 24/7 shop. Yeah. There's probably a big shipping difference between shipping from Scotland to Bulgaria than Scotland to the United States, not to mention the import tariffs that are imposed upon them in our country versus whatever Bulgaria may charge. So, well, I'm not surprised. Have I tried ouzo? I had ouzo in the 90s. I dated a girl back then. That was her favorite thing. Nick says I should do some Crown Royal and then open the Corsair power supply and compare the velvet bags. We should do a velvet bag review. Which one's better for the money? Rusty Shackelford says I could go for some of your Not Your Father's root beer right now. That's actually really good. There's two of those different root beer beers, and Not Your Father's one is the good one. It's very root beery. GPU in this system, someone is asking, this is a Vega 64. It's the highest graphics card available from AMD, available today. Stephen Barber says, pop open a nice Mike's Hard. That's all I need. Yeah, they're okay. Mike's Hard Lemonade, Mike's Hard, yeah, they're okay. Why don't I open a good old Bartles and James wine cooler and a Zima? Patrick Russo says, I've got over 500 Crown Royal bags. I'll send you some, Carrie. No. Whatever you do, you keep those. That's your problem. I got enough of my own problems. Mad Dog 2020, $2 Chuck, yeah. Carl says, I'm going to send you a local whiskey to me in Ireland. It's called Middleton Irish Whiskey. You know, I like Bailey's, but that's more of an Irish cream. Bailey's is, I put Bailey's on ice and drink that straight. It's sometimes a little sweet. It's very good though. Patrick says, how about just 1 or 2 bags? How about I send you 1 or 2 bags, Patrick? What the hell am I going to do with velvet bags? Try rum chata. I've got rum chata, not my thing. My wife likes it, so we've got it. I don't drink it. Have I had a hurricane? Yes. Carrie, give Carrie some Buckfast and a kebab. Yeah, no thanks. Troll McTrollington says hello, says he just tuned in. How about we bring in Lyle and Jimmy to drunk tech support? You never know. You never know. Will an i3-8100 bottleneck a good GPU, say a GTX 1060? It might. You have to understand that. When you say the word gaming, it's like saying the word car. How you define the word gaming, very much it depends on how you define the word car. If I say the word car to you, what do you picture in your head? Do you picture a 2-door sedan, a 4-door saloon, a sports car, a hybrid, maybe a pickup truck, a 4-wheel drive? Do you picture an electric Tesla? Do you picture a van or a station wagon? Do you picture a truck, like a big truck? Do you picture anything with 4 wheels? You see, you can't get into somebody's head and understand the definition of the words that they choose. And I say this because when people say, is this good for gaming? It depends on what the game is you're playing, what settings you're going to be playing it on, and how many monitors. In other words, you and I could be playing the same exact game with the same exact hardware, and yours could be bottlenecking and mine could be running fine simply because I play under different settings. Maybe you've got 2 4K monitors. Maybe you've just got 1 4K monitor. And maybe you turn and crank up every resolution feature because that's important to you. These are all effects of the individual game itself, the drivers that you use, the hardware that you pick, and how the developers of the game program the game to utilize more CPU or GPU. Some games are more CPU intensive, while others are GPU intensive. So what you need to do is to research this yourself, and it's extraordinarily and profoundly simple and fast. All you have to do, and I want you to please, 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 if you are sincere about wanting to know the truth, about wanting to know the answers to your questions, you have to exercise a minimal amount of effort. You have to move your fingers just a little bit across your keyboard and your mouse and go to a forum where they are discussing the game in its current version and find out what the players of the game are saying about their hardware. You can use a search in the forum to do that, or you may post a question of your own asking for what people generally recommend in that forum for the best gameplay experience at a certain resolution that you like to play at, and you will get the best, most accurate answer. And you will probably get different answers, but they will all probably hover in the same arena to get you right into the ballpark you need to be so that you will make the right decision. People who don't play that specific game under certain specific settings simply can't tell you if something's going to bottleneck or not, regardless of the hardware configuration you're proposing. It's simply not possible. If you want a very specific answer, you have to ask a very specific question. So you can't say gaming. You have to say what game, at what resolution, and what settings. And how many frames per second do you consider to be good? So the more information you provide in your question, the more specific and helpful the answer may be. And never rely on one answer. You will see that there will be a common theme to the answers, and you'll see a couple answers that are way off in left field because people like to mess with other people, especially online. You say, I need some help with my computer, how do I fix this? And it'll always be one jackwagon who says, format C drive. And if you do it, they will laugh their butt off at how gullible and in their mind how stupid you are. So be very, very careful with the information that you glean from the internet, unless what you're looking for is fact. Fact is very easy to confirm on the internet. Many people disguise opinion as fact, but you'll know opinions are not fact when you cannot consistently find the same answer. For example, if you want to know when James Buchanan was president of the United States, you can look that information up and consistently find the same information over and over and over and over and over again. Maybe once in a while you'll see some jackwagon who's just trying to throw a wrench in just to screw with people. It's what people on the internet do. Anytime when they create like artificial intelligence things, the first thing people do is see it as a challenge to break it, to make it, and this has happened. You can research the stories where I think it was Google released their AI interface, and within 24 hours it was turned into a racist bigot because of its learning from how people were talking to it, and it was adapting. And it's almost like taking a small child and just torturing it to become a murderer. Something that doesn't happen naturally, something people normally people wouldn't do that, but it's all over the internet. It is a source of entertainment to mess with somebody and to mess with technology, to push it and try and break it and try and manipulate it. There's a weird sense of accomplishment that they have destroyed something made for good. And that just shows how unevolved we are as a species, that people would stand in the way of evolution. But there's valuable lessons to be learned from it from an artificial intelligence perspective, to recognize these extremists and these challengers and find a way to program the artificial intelligence to recognize that for what it is, as most of us do, but not all of us. That's why the scam artists who call and say your computer's infected, or that they're the IRS and they're threatening you with being arrested if you don't pay in gift cards, or the grandma scam where somebody calls and says, I was just in an accident, I need you to wire me some money. I see this in the news every single day. Every day there's another one. So you really have to be on the internet very, very skeptical of anything, verify it, and rely only on the information that you know is a reliable source through past history, or that you've been able to verify yourself. And certainly do that before you advise anybody else, or if you advise somebody else, put a little disclaimer on it that that's the way you feel, but it may not be fact. It's just the right thing to do. And while you will represent the minority, it certainly would be refreshing to see that once in a while, that, hey, these are just my opinions, but you know what they say about opinions, right? They're like butts. Everybody's got one and they usually stink. So keep that in mind. Platter Jockey's contributed $10. He says, you rock, and thanks for the continuing education. Well, thank you for continuing to tune in and watch and support the channel. I couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much. Most tech tubers pronounce it ball necking. Never heard that term in my life. Carrie, would you ever consider building a retro Pentium machine such as a Pentium 2? Why? Because I don't have any work to do, and you know, I used to fix and repair Pentium 2s for many, many years, and good riddance to them. It's not like there's any benefit. What would be the point? What would be the end result? What would be the return on my investment? I will tell you this. I see people trying to build a computer for the first time, and one of the common mistakes I see is people looking for the cheapest part. And I've talked about this yesterday, I've talked about it in the past. Buying the cheapest parts is wonderful if you're a technician, because it will pose a challenge. Like if you do like the junkyard wars stuff that other tech channels do, that really requires a fair amount of technical challenge to get that stuff to work. It's a very difficult challenge. If you're a first-time builder, you will already have a difficult challenge, and you should make that as easy as possible so that you will more than likely succeed and be encouraged to want to do it again. If your first experience is a miserable one, you will regret it and you will never do it again. First impressions are lasting impressions, and you should not set yourself up for a task you are not prepared for. So if you've never built a computer before and you don't quite have enough money to do it, so instead you just buy the cheapest no-name brand stuff so you can finally build your own computer, you are setting yourself up not only for failure, but to regret the entire experience. That is something an experienced technician should do. I've warned you, you will completely ruin the experience by not using quality name brand parts on your first build. Now, it doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money. I've never said you had to spend a lot of money. I'm not saying you need to buy the most expensive parts, because that's just as equally bad. If the first build you're going to do is a Threadripper, it's going to be a challenge. Your first build should be probably around $600 to $700 range, and you should use quality name brand components. And if you really want to succeed, match the components part for part with a build that you see on my channel, detailing every wire, every screw, and follow along with it. Don't skip anything. All the information is there for a reason. And there's about a 99.9% chance that if you paid attention and you did everything exactly as I did it, in the order that I did it, and didn't skip anything and didn't substitute any parts, that you will end up with the same end result as I did on my video. And you will have this wonderful sense of accomplishment. And you'll want to do it again and again and again. And as you gain that experience, you can start adding a little more challenge to it by going and saying, you know, maybe I'll try this power supply, I'll try this motherboard. Nothing wrong with that, and I strongly encourage it. But to just go all out and buy a bunch of old parts or cheap no-name brand parts off Craigslist or eBay, I'm telling you, for the most part, you are more than likely going to regret the entire experience, and it'll be much more difficult than I have explained and shown on video time after time after time, because you didn't do it the way I recommended. So it's your money and it's your time. I just want you to have proper expectations. Building an older computer, older hardware, and cheaper hardware requires more technical experience. It also often requires a lot more time, a lot more patience, and what you don't pay for in money, you pay for in time. So find the balance. Nick says, I'm going to be doing a first-time build with my nephew this weekend. Very awesome. For a first build, you could go for $500 US without a GPU and still be able to do 1080p gaming with a Ryzen APU. Yeah, you'd be right up there at about 500, and it wouldn't game very well. You'd be better off buying a console, quite frankly. but you could do it. Should you do it? Well, that's a different question. Only you can answer that. I think as long as your expectations are appropriate, you won't be disappointed. But I suppose that's true of everything. Colin Hilton says, my first build last Christmas was 1,400 pounds. And he did a second build 2 months later in February. He spent 1,200 pounds. 1-2 Buckle My Shoe says, I need the best PC for video editing. Any advice? Yes, there's very simple advice if you need a PC for video editing. You want the most expensive of everything. You want the maximum amount of storage, the fastest amount of storage, the maximum and fastest amount of RAM, the maximum and fastest CPU that your budget will afford you. Also the maximum and most expensive, well, not most expensive, the fastest and best graphics card you can afford. You need the video editing is one of the most difficult tasks you can ask a computer to do. And even if you had a bottomless budget and you bought the best graphics card and the best CPU and the most amount of RAM that that motherboard would hold, with the fastest storage and the biggest storage to hold these large files, it still could be improved. It still won't be lightning quick. Computers, as far as video editing, have come a long way, but it's still very hard work. So very simply put, spend the most you can possibly spend on the best equipment, because whatever you get will never be enough. It'll get the job done, but it might take a while. Of course, it also depends on what kind of videos. If the minute you start rendering 4K or 8K videos, then suddenly even that, if you thought it was bad at HD, it gets worse in Ultra HD. And if you want to do 360-degree videos, again with multiple video input sources, it requires a significant investment in hardware. You can do it on cheaper hardware, but you have to be extraordinarily patient. So you pay with time or you pay with money. Carrie, do you have any clients who are software developers like Visual Studio, SQL Server? I don't really get to that level of development with the clients. I couldn't tell you specifically what the clients use the computer for. I know I have some clients that do 3D modeling and accident reconstruction. I couldn't necessarily tell you what software they use or how often they use it. I don't look over their shoulders and supervise them, nor do I know how to address that software. So they would, if they had a computer problem, they would contact me to fix it, and if they had a software problem with their business software, they would contact that vendor for support. You have to understand that each industry typically has proprietary software for that industry. Lawyers have their own type of software that they use. Dentists, there's a popular piece of software called Dentrix. Not every dentist uses it, of course, but many do. You could, as a technician, create a niche and just be a Dentrix tech and don't do any other work but Dentrix, and you could charge a prime fee for that because it's a specialty, but then you would have fewer customers and it would be more difficult to find customers because there's only so many dentists. But one of the ways people succeed in business is they find a niche and they specialize in it. But if you're somebody who thinks that you're one person and you'll be able to fix anything, hardware or software, it's just not humanly possible. No man is an island. So, well, you can know enough to get yourself in trouble. You can know the basics. You're certainly going to have strengths, and you will recognize those strengths with certain hardware and software. And that's, in my opinion, if you want to be successful in business, that's where you will focus the niche of your business and refer out the other stuff to someone else, because you'll be losing too much money in the time it's going to take you to figure it out. The only exception would be is if there was a potential to pivot your business over to another niche, in which case it would be worth your time and investment of education, learning, and experimentation. I know techs that wanted to become administrators for servers that bought used servers, put them in their house and used them every day so that they could learn how to use them, learn how Active Directory works, learn how SQL, all that stuff, so that they could then apply for the job. You don't see many people doing that today, but in the 90s, I knew several people who had servers in their homes solely for the purpose of forcing themselves to use it and learn it, in the hopes that if an opportunity became available, that they would be ready to fill the position. Keith Butler says, Carrie, what did you think of my copy of your intro? Why don't we ask everybody? I kind of liked it, really. I can see potential where it could be better, but I say that about everything. I say that about myself. I like it, but I think I like where you're going with it. I wonder if I have it. Let me see if I have it available. Good. So let me create. Let's create a new media source. And let's browse to the NAS. And then let's go to the YouTube directory. Why does it not appear? Oh. Wrong directory. This is better. Here's the video that Colin has made. What do you guys think? Let's do it again. It seems like the aspect ratio is off. I like the idea. I see where you're going. I think it could be improved. It certainly needs to be 1920 by 1080 or at least 720p or 720. Keith says he did that with Power Director. Well, you're better with Power Director than I am. If you guys have ideas for intros, it doesn't have to follow that format. You want to send them to me and give me permission to use them. Certainly be happy to experiment with them and see what people think. And another contribution has come in. It says, this is again from one random person. Again, I believe these are Norwegian kroner, 50 Norwegian kroner, if I'm not mistaken. Are you familiar with ITX cases for small but powerful computers? And if so, do you have any recommendations for a portable PC? Well, I've done numerous LAN PCs. If you look in my video library, you'll see that there's a Leon Lee portable computer. It has a little handle on it. You can also do a search for the Train PC and the N-Case M1. The M1 is by far the nicest mini ITX case I have ever worked in my life. It's a crowdsourced design. It's expensive. It's $185. The Train PC was $260 just for the case. Or you could look at something like a Nook, but you're probably not going to be gaming too much on it. The modern latest Nook, which is a bit larger, it's a kind of a long, narrow box, can do some gaming, much, much better than previous versions of Nooks. And you could also stick it in your pocket. So depending on what kind of games you want to play, I have covered mini ITX systems at least 6 different videos in the video library here on YouTube. But I would say that the most current one is the N-Case M1. So if you just do a Google, if you type on YouTube search, type Carrie Holzman, all is one word, because that's how my channel is named, and then put the letter M, like Michigan, and the number 1. Carrie Holzman space M1, and look at the video results of YouTube search. And you'll see that ITX design is genius. But again, it is an expensive custom case which is crowdsourced. So they took a bunch of ideas from the internet community on how to maximize being able to hold 2 graphics cards, a liquid cooler, just this crazy design to jam in as much equipment in the smallest space possible. Carrie, do you get a discount from Newegg? No. I can walk through the halls of Newegg and they don't even know who I am. Security would constantly stop me and ask me for credentials and why I belong there. And I would have to explain that I was their spokesman. But also understand that Newegg has a few thousand employees, and it's very reasonable that these employees don't give a rat's behind about Newegg's promotional person or YouTube channel. They just care about doing whatever they're hired to do. And it was very unusual, but it did happen when somebody would see me walking down the hall and go, "Oh, you're Carrie Holzman, it's such a pleasure to meet you." I think that happened 3 times. So even in the halls of Newegg, I was not recognized and often scrutinized for what I was doing there, because what they did know is they'd never seen me before, and I didn't look like they looked, and it raised a lot of skepticism. So there was more than one occasion where we had to get security involved. I even had a guy harass me about where I parked my car because he claimed I was a visitor and I don't belong. I'm sorry, he claimed I was an employee. I had the opposite. He said, "You can't be a visitor and be here all day." I said, "Well, I'm not an employee, so where do you want me to park? I'm happy to park wherever you want me to park. You're not an employee?" I said, "No. But, you know, I don't care where I was told to park there. I'm not going to argue with you about it. I'm just telling you that's where I was told." We had this whole half-hour discussion out in the parking lot. He's like, "I was getting ready to tag your car and tow it. It's been here 3 days in a row." I go, "Yeah, I come out for 3 days at a time. Sometimes 5 days at a time. If you don't want me to park here, just tell me where you..." He goes, "No, you're parked in the right spot." So this is what happens with large companies, is communication breakdown. That's why large companies just simply, in general, they can't respond very quickly to things. It takes a small company to do that. When you have a company that's so big, the left arm doesn't know what the right arm is doing. Large companies, these big multinational corporations, companies like Verizon and Time Warner, it is not surprising why they're victims of so much social engineering, because you will run into employees that are legitimate, high-ranking employees. It could be your boss's boss. You've never seen him before. You don't know who he is, and you'll be like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I was working with a buddy of mine at Intel, and Intel's filled with hallways, and he bumped into one of the founders of Intel. Literally ran right into him. His head was down as he rounded a corner and ran right into Andy Grove. Now, he knew who Andy Grove was, but he'd never seen him in the building before. And in all the years I worked at Intel, the only time I met the CEO was when I quit Intel and I worked for a radio show, and they sent me out to interview their representatives about the new Coro Duo chip in Santa Clarita, California at Intel HQ. And I can't remember the guy's name. It was after Craig Barrett. And I just thought it was ironic that in all the years I worked for Intel, I never once ran into a CEO, but worked for a journalist, or work as a journalist, and now I have the CEO's attention. It's very interesting to me. Andy Grove was a very nice guy. I think he was from Hungary. He had this Wolfgang Puck kind of accent. I liked the way he talked. A very nice guy, and our joke was, my buddy bumps right into him and he says, "I can't believe, you won't believe what just happened." I go, "What?" He goes, I ran, my head was down, I just ran right into him. I go, "Well, what did he do?" "Oh, he smiled, he said it was okay, but I think when I turned my back, he looked at his security guard and he went like this to me." He didn't, he was just kidding. It was funny, because Andy was such a nice, approachable guy. So what you guys have to understand about old hardware, you know, I'm a technician, right? I keep emphasizing that because I feel like it keeps getting forgotten. Sometimes when people ask questions, they don't seem to really understand what being a technician means. Sorry I'm off camera, I'm grabbing something, but I'm talking to you on my wireless microphone, so I know you can still hear me. And what it means is you deal with so many computers every day, it's a bit overwhelming. You might like food, but if you're a chef working 10-hour days, the last thing you want to do when you get home is cook. I mean, you might in the beginning, you might be like, this is really enjoyable, I like it. But after about 25 years, there's little that you won't have tasted or tried making. And when somebody says, here, you know, a neighbor comes over and says, oh, we made you an apple pie. You're like, oh, thank you. Yeah, that's the last thing I want right now, and I can make a better apple pie. But it's the thought that counts. It's really nice. So when you guys ask me about old hardware, or you guys ask me about trying to recycle, you know, some old junkyard stuff that's completely not supported by any Windows OS, is insecure, it is dangerous to run. I mean, I suppose you could put Linux on it, but even, you know, running Linux on hardware that's old, it could be a slow, painful experience, especially as Linux continues to evolve. Like everything else, it becomes more resource hungry. So to give you an example of exactly what I'm talking about here, let me get this other camera up here and let me just show you what it's like in my world. Now this is just what I could carry. No pun intended to my name. Let me get this cable out of the way because it's blocking our view. And let's see if we can raise this camera up. Come on. Oh, wrong one. Raise it up. And let's turn it on. And let's kick the feed over so you can see what this camera sees. Walking around in circles. Can I do it from here? That's not it. Is that it? That's not it. All right, we're getting closer. Let's go full screen on that. Now, I don't show you this to brag. I show you this to give you a concept of the sheer number of computers I have worked on over the years. That this is just what I could carry out. And the only reason they're kept is for diagnostic purposes if somebody were to bring me an old machine that I suspect has a bad CPU. These mostly, not all of them, but most of them have come from machines that were obsolete and disassembled because they would have cost more to fix than they are to replace. So I will take the parts out that I think can be reused, or not reused, but rather used for diagnostic purposes. And there's not much call for any of these AMD Athlons anymore. The problem is, on some of these systems, I don't know, let's say a system didn't boot. So the reason it didn't boot came down to a bad motherboard or a bad CPU. I don't know which one, but because the CPU was so old, it would cost more money to find a compatible motherboard, only to find out the system still doesn't work because the CPU was bad, and now we're delaying how long it's going to take for the customer to get the system back. And it's hard to find parts, especially in warranty, that are old. Usually when you buy old parts, you don't know what you're getting. Especially if you order from somewhere like eBay, and the person selling says, well, when I sold it to you, it worked, so you obviously broke it. I'm not going to warranty your money. You're waiting forever for the part to arrive. It maybe arrives in a damaged box. All these sort of things that delay the repair, and most of the time when somebody wants a computer fixed, they need it fixed now. The problem is, I don't know which of these are bad and which of these are good. And to test every one would require a different motherboard, I'm sure the same motherboard could be used for a couple, but for the most part, you're going to need almost a different motherboard for every one of these because they're all different sockets. Now, if your time is worth $125 an hour and you can get 20 bucks for the chip, and somebody offers you $20 for the chip, then you've got to put it in a protective package. You've got to go to the post office. You've got to address it. You've got to wait in line and pay for the postage with return receipt. And then if the customer gets it and says the pin is bent and they want a refund, you are making about 50 cents an hour. It's not an efficient way to spend your time. On the other hand, if you're unemployed and you've got nothing else better to do with your time, it's something, I guess, to do. I'm not in that position. So some of these work, some of these don't. I don't know which is which. This one, I started writing on them because they can be so hard to read. This is a Celeron 2.1 gig. But then you have to figure out what socket it is and which chipset. It's, you know, this one's bigger than the others, the physical size. Obviously, it's going to require a different board. That's obviously an AMD chip. Is it going to focus? Focus. So frustrating. Sometimes you just got to turn the darn autofocus off or something. There it is. And, you know, I keep them in the package here just to keep the pins from getting bent. Let's grab another one. Here's an old Intel. Look at this piece of history, archaeology. I'm trying to hold it so that the shadow doesn't keep covering up the, there it is. Look at that, I could overclock this Celeron 600 and I could get 1.2 gigahertz out of it. Isn't that impressive when you can go buy the cheapest CPU available on Newegg that's twice that speed? Seems overclocking just makes overclocking look stupid. Here's an old Intel Pentium 3. 800 whopping megahertz. This is a little more modern. And they just collect, you know, over time, they just collect up, and before you know it, you got to start disposing of them. You got to do something with them. I can't sell them because I don't want to warranty them. I don't want to be held accountable and responsible, not only for the product itself, but for somebody who perhaps doesn't install it properly, breaks it, and then claims that it was broken the whole time, that they didn't do it, and now they want a refund. I don't have time for that kind of nonsense. There's not enough money in it to deal with that kind of frustration and aggravation, especially when you're dealing with shipping. So these are just the current stash. I've shown you, I've got a CPU video where I go back to the old 286, 386, 486 equivalent processors from Cyrix, IBM, Texas Instruments. I went through all of that a couple of years ago. If you like that sort of thing, you could certainly check that out. So yeah, it's really just a matter of trying to stay on top of the buildup of all the parts. It's crazy. Let's turn this camera back off. And let's switch back over here. I will put this out there. I do have several, let's see, I've got 10 Seagate 1 terabyte hard drives that are probably 5 years old or older that work perfectly. They've all been securely erased. They've all passed Crystal Disk Mark info. And again, it's the same with the CPUs. You keep it because every once in a while you need a temporary hard drive for something. I don't need as many as I've got. If somebody's local to the Phoenix area, because they would cost a ton of money to ship and would probably get damaged to ship, I would sell all in one fell swoop. I'd say, look, here's 10 drives, make me a reasonable offer. You know, at 20 bucks a drive, it's 200 bucks. If somebody says, would you take 180? You're gonna pay me cash, I'll meet you somewhere, here's your 10 drives, have a nice day. We're done. That's it. If somebody said, hey, I'll take all those CPUs you have, I'm not mailing them, I'm not dealing with it. If somebody was local, made me an offer, I would never see or hear regarding these CPUs. I would never be held accountable or responsible for it. I'd sell them. Problem is finding somebody who agrees to those terms. They can get a really good deal, but you don't know what you're getting. It's sort of a mystery bag. You might get one CPU in the bunch that's worth the whole lot, maybe not. Sort of like the people that buy the storage lockers, they don't know what's behind the door. I don't find too many buyers that are interested in that. But if a buyer was local and they wanted to get this equipment off my hands, I've got several Seagate NAS units, many of them work. They're gonna be slow, but they work. I mean, they were good for the time. They're fully functional. Couple of them are bad. You could probably use the bad ones as donor parts. I would offload all of them in one fell swoop and go, here, take them all, make me a reasonable offer. So if somebody's interested in that sort of thing and that's your thing, let me know. What I don't like are people that that waste my time. People that want me to tell them what the codes on the drives are, what the manufacturing dates, how many hours they have. I don't have time for that. So for that reason, I hold them. They work. I'll end up using them on occasion. And every day, well, not every day, but every week that passes by, there's probably another one added to the pile as another system becomes obsolete. It'll get dismantled and recycled, and anything that I can reuse potentially for diagnostic purposes, if it's got a graphics card, if it's got CPU fan or heat sink that could potentially be used in a repair or a diagnostic of a repair, I will keep those parts and recycle the rest of it myself. And that's generally the way the business works, and it can take a lot of time sometimes to dismantle a system. I've got a friend I give most of my parts to who strips the metals off of them, strips the gold contacts and whatnot. And I've had a few that I've given him that he's been able to reassemble into workable systems to give to his school, local school. And some people that are financially strapped that are happy to have anything, but they don't know it came from me, so they're not calling me with their questions or support, and I'm not the one wasting time getting Windows and drivers to work. A friend of mine doesn't mind it. It's how he bides his time. You know, he's not self-employed. He clocks out, and after he clocks out, he's very happy to contribute his time and to help his community, and God bless him for that. He doesn't make any, I think he made $20 on the sale of it, and he's probably got, I would say, at least 10 hours in configuring it and getting it working, and then dealing with all the follow-up questions and support from somebody like gets a virus or something doesn't work, they call him. They don't call me, they don't know who I am. Thank God. Carrie, I thought you saw only 2 bad CPUs in your life. Yes, I've seen about 2 confirmed bad CPUs. I don't know which, if any of these are bad. I can't tell you for sure they're all good. I also can't tell you that they didn't become bad because of improper handling and storage. See the way I'm holding it? This is not how you hold a CPU. But I don't care. This has no value to me. So it may be possible that this was good when I pulled it, but has now since become bad. So I don't know without testing it, but I can tell you in my experience, I won't say it's possible. It's entirely possible I've seen 3 or 4 bad CPUs. I can only remember 2 confirmed bad CPUs. Knocked my microphone loose. There it is. I imagine that in the years ahead, there'll be Threadrippers in this pile. I mean, you don't see too many Threadrippers, but I also have an old pile of old Pentiums that are very, very rare. Carrie, I want to see the boxes of cables you have. Most of my cables have been put away in the garage. I used to use a lot of audio cables, red and white audio RCA cables. Just don't use those anymore. I haven't gotten to throwing them away. I think for some reason I might need them. I don't know why. Coaxial cables, don't have much call for those anymore. Not really. I mean, running from the cable box to the TV, but for the most part, the cable company gives them to you anyway. Now my thing is HDMI cables, micro HDMI and adapters and Ethernet cables and power cables. With all the GPU crisis, did your business suffer? I don't have a single client that has a GPU. Well, no, I take it back. That one client that I had the system here, that was a proprietary machine for accident reconstruction that had an SLI configuration. I think it was two GeForce 750s, 760s. My clients don't want to spend money on stuff they don't have to spend money on. So for the most part, they all run onboard graphics built into the CPU, and prior to that, built into the motherboard to save them money. And no client has ever complained. They can run multiple monitors, they can do everything they want to do for business. They're not game developers, and so they don't need a discrete graphics card, and therefore the GPU crisis had no impact on me. In general, the GPU crisis wouldn't have an impact on business anyway. A business is going to write off whatever the business expense is. If it's $600 or $1,200, it doesn't matter. If they need it, they buy it. The money doesn't matter. If they don't need it and they buy it, that's where you're going to run into a problem. Potentially where if they figure out that you sold them something that they didn't need and they paid $1,200 for a $600 computer because you put a $600 graphics card in it so they can open Word and email and Excel and Quicken and QuickBooks and databases, you're probably not going to have that client much longer. Carrie, what brand is the Kilowatt you have there? It's made by P3, the letter P like Peter, and the number 3. You don't have to buy the exact model I have. This is actually a bit older. There's more modern versions available that are a little less money. Carrie, is there any way to contact you apart from chat? I try to keep my email address hidden except from people who donate or contribute. They are like customers to me and they get my time and attention. When I make free content for people, that's my gift to them, and when people want more gifts from me, they need to give me something back first. Whether it's advice, technical support, I generally direct them to go to a website that does that unless they pay me specifically or give something to me before they ask me for more. If you're contacting me about business or wanting to buy these used parts, you can contact me here on YouTube. You can send me a private message on YouTube. But if you do that, be sure to include your email address. So when I respond to you, many people have contacted me with YouTube's private messaging, and YouTube doesn't tell you when you have a new message. You have to manually check it. And if you don't do that, you'll never know I responded. Also, some people have got their privacy settings so high that they're like, could you please help me? And then I go to respond and it says, this person will not accept responses from anybody. So people actually shoot themselves in the foot with their security because they set it a long time ago and they have no recollection or memory of ever setting that setting, and I have no way to tell them. So if you send me a private message here on YouTube with your email address and it's something business related, I'll be happy to help you. If what you're looking for is more free information or more free personal help, you're going to have to give me something for that because I don't work for you. I'm providing the content as a gift, and I hope that you appreciate it. And if there's some business transaction that you'd like to discuss, I'm all ears. So I hope you understand that. It's nothing personal. It's just there's only one of me. And you would see that you wouldn't believe the number of emails I get from people who want to meet me in person. They don't want to buy anything from me. They've never supported or financially contributed. They just go, hey man, I'd love to meet you. I go, well, that'd be great. I would love to meet you too, but I have work to do. So it's nothing personal. Maybe we'll do a meet and greet someday. We've done that in the past with tech vets. I don't think there's enough people to justify it. Have 4 people show up who would actually, those who say they want to show up and those who actually would, and those who live outside of the Phoenix area who just wouldn't be in town at the time. There's a number of obstacles there. Some people are like, hey, I'm going to be in Arizona in this month. Could we get together for lunch? Probably not. I can't sit here and make videos and go to lunch with you. I can't be in 2 places at the same time. I really do hope people don't take that as an ego, or people really understand the logic behind it. And my focus, of course, is on running a business and staying in business so that I can continue to provide this free content for all of you guys. And that's why you're not going to easily find my email address. But to everybody who's ever donated to the channel through the Tech Vets website, they all have it, and as they should. Have you considered getting a I keep hitting my microphone when I do that. Have you considered getting a sponsor button on your page? Unlock badges and custom emotes for your chat. Well, that requires more work, doesn't it? So do you want me to spend time dealing with doing these things for sponsors, or do you want me to make content? If I had an employee or somebody that was a partner in the business that could focus on the administrative part of it, that would be great. But asking me to do more work as though it's a benefit to me, I'm having a really hard time understanding the logic. When somebody says, like in a Patreon account, they go, well, if you donate this, you're going to get that. Somebody has to keep track of who paid what and who gets what. And I can't keep track of all of that while at the same time create content, while at the same time help my business customers. And the business customers are where that's what's financing this. And with occasion, we do some fundraising. I think I've done that 3 times, I've done it 4 times in 8 years. So about every other year, I do fundraising in order to get equipment I need to get, or do a special project like, everything's backwards, like this unit here, which is still an ongoing project. And I'm trying to stretch it out and make the most out of that investment from the contributors. I want them to get their money's worth out of the content. I really want to squeeze everything out of this system, run every test and make the most out of it. But it's not an ongoing contribution. It was like a one-time thing. We're done with it. We move on. Colin says, why spoil the best channel on YouTube? Wait a minute, and scroll away. Where did it go? Why spoil the best channel on YouTube by entertaining sponsors? This is coming from the most generous contributor. If anybody was a sponsor, it would be Colin Hilton. Colin is the closest thing I have to a sponsor. It's nice to see the community support each other and to support the channel so I don't have to get a sponsor. I don't have to become a sellout. I don't have to be shilling for razor blades or products that are unrelated to education. Scooby says, I was an MC Soft competition winner 4 years ago. Yeah, well, there's been several competitions. I've given away the Gunner glasses. I've given away the tech bench. We give away several tech benches. We've had at least 2 or 3 tech bench giveaways. And all of this was prior to ever accepting any donation ever. You don't have to be rich to be generous. And I like to, who doesn't want to make somebody else happy, right? I mean, it feels good. It feels good to give. And And when people start expecting something in return, when people go, well, now I've given you something, now give me something. I mean, I get it. I get it. But what's really nice is when someone says, here's this and you owe me nothing. I'm speechless. And I feel very indebted to that person. If that person ever contacts me in the future with a question about anything, they have my attention. They always will. Somebody like Colin Hilton, I'm not going to forget him. It's like when you leave a good tip for a server at a restaurant that you enjoy going to. If that server sees you again, they're going to remember you. And ideally, they're going to treat you a little differently. You're going to feel more like your friends, less like a business transaction. Glenn McEnroe says, here's $5. Thanks for your very helpful videos. Thank you, Glenn, and I appreciate that. It is more blessed to give than to receive. Well, I don't know about that, but I know it feels really good to give. And it does for me. And that's why we've done the giveaways, and I've worked with some folks, and no money was exchanged. When MCSoft gave me the licenses to give away, we gave away 200 MCSoft licenses. I made $0. I mean, the video was monetized, but if you consider I make half of a quarter of a penny for every view, I clearly wasn't doing it for the money. Same with the TechBench giveaway. That was really easy. The company was appreciative of the attention. They've made it clear they'd be happy to do it any time in the future. I mean, I haven't contacted them in a while, but they loved it. And they left it up to me to decide how many to give away and to just send them the winner's name and address, and they shipped them out. It does get a little frustrating that when you give somebody a prize, it's very rare that they ever say thank you or follow up. I mean, they're not obligated to. You'd be surprised. When I worked at the radio show, we gave away a $2,000 computer and didn't so much as get a thank you. Not even a photograph with a smile in the computer, nothing. Just never heard from them. And again, they're not obligated to, but it feels a little like being used. It feels like, didn't we have something here? You know, you entered the contest, you participated, you were selected, you won, and now all of our communication stops and you don't talk to us anymore. It just kind of hurts a little bit. I'm a sensitive guy. I don't know what to say. But people who contribute using the donation page, they always get a thank you from me. And many times I will ask, is there anything I can do for you? And I don't mean that as your servant. I mean it as a genuine thank you for doing this for me. Is there anything that I can do for you? Do you have a question I can answer? Is there something that I have that you want? I mean, that's how you get my attention. When you have a bunch of people vying for your attention, you have to separate the wheat from the chaff. You know, you have to say, okay, this person has contributed. I want to make sure, first and foremost, that they're aware that I acknowledged and appreciate their contribution. Versus somebody else that says, hey, I'm a fan and I really appreciate all that free content and could you help me more? And they've never given anything back in return. Those messages usually go unseen. You know, they just go right into the trash because there's too many of them. And it's pulling me away from helping people that are waiting patiently for me, who are paying for it. You know, they're giving back. And I realize not everybody's in a position to give back, but I'm not in a position to help everybody. That's just the way the world is. And it's an interesting position to be in when you really do want to help everybody, as I am. I really do. But there's just so many hours in a day, and it's very difficult to justify continuing to help somebody for free when somebody with money or somebody who has contributed gets ignored. That's not right. One two buckle my shoe says, I paid 40 pounds an hour for banjo lesson. Where did it go? I paid 40 pounds an hour for banjo lessons one-on-one. I would be happy to video or call time for picking your brain. Do you have a number that is similar? With a contribution, we could certainly arrange a Google Hangout or a Skype call. It would have to be scheduled according to what's going on in my schedule, and I would just schedule you like any other customer, for sure, regardless of where you are in the world. That would not be a problem. Luis Mija says, that reminds me, I want to thank you, Carrie, for the amazing badge. It finally arrived yesterday, and I plan on placing it on my computer once. Where do you live? Those badges should have arrived a long time ago. It usually takes about a week for the badge to go anywhere in the world. There are some countries where it gets a little difficult. I know Thailand, their mail's a little iffy there from what I was told, and it took a bit longer. But where are you? What country are you in that your badge took almost a month to arrive? That's very unusual. Sharon Idle says, fans are a pain at times. If they were real fans, they'd be supporting you from the start. Yeah, some fans think that you owe them. I can't even imagine what a real celebrity has to deal with when they go out in public and people expect them to take a selfie with them and interrupt their day, and you're just trying to get something done. And if you don't do it, you're a jerk. I thought you were a nice guy. I'm glad I'm not in that position. Linda Hudson says, I really appreciate the free subscription you gave me. I thanked you before and I thanked you again. I'm thanking you again. It meant so much to me. That was so wonderful. I really enjoy your videos. Well, thank you, Linda. That's kind of you. I'm not saying nobody said thank you, but I'm saying it's when the prize winners win, oftentimes, more times than the other way, you never hear from them again. Or you hear from them, like I had several people contact me and ask me for their product key. I don't keep track of your product key. You won the prize. You got your product key. You think I'm keeping track of 200 winners' product keys in some sort of Excel database for free because you lost it? No, easy come, easy go. You had it, you lost it, you didn't take care of it. It's not my job. You know, it's asking too much. You know, you got it for free. I fulfilled my end of the deal. You paid nothing. You entered the contest. And what's surprising is every now and again, I'll get emails for people that want to enter that contest, not realizing they're looking at a video that's several years old. And they just get deleted. Luis says, I'm in Houston, Texas. I know I was perplexed as well, but I was patient. That's very unusual. From Phoenix to Houston, it should have taken 3 days. Did you see a postmark date on the envelope? Was the envelope damaged? Did it look like it got stuck in a machine? I'm very puzzled by that. I'm glad you got it. I will be having, just so you know, I sold through 200 case badges. I thought it would take a while. They went faster than I estimated. My big fear was that I was going to sell 50 and sit on 150, and I have to pay for them up front. And the engraver I've got does, those of you who receive the case badges can see the quality of those. I mean, they're just spot on perfect. They're not damaged in any way. They don't have any sharp edges. They have a consistent quality. And the engraver, I don't really know him. I've never met him in person, but I get the hunch he just kind of works when he feels like it. I don't want to insult him. I like him. But he's very slow to respond, and I have to be very patient, but he's worth waiting for. And I just ordered another 200 case badges. I don't estimate that they'll be sold out anytime soon. I haven't received them yet, but when I do, I think I'll make it a regular thing, and until they're sold out again, to continue to offer them at the same deal for people who missed out the first time, people that are finding my channel for the first time. And I hope to offer that as a regular thing. It's easy, you know, it's easy to address an envelope. It takes me 3 minutes to get a letter printed and signed and associate the payment with the mailing address and get it out. And it's, you know, I really don't want to get into the whole merch side of things. I don't want to be selling t-shirts and nonsense. I would love to make a deal with a manufacturer to provide a quality screwdriver with the right bits and some Band-Aids, just everything a tech should have. A flashlight, some Band-Aids, a screwdriver with changeable bits that's magnetized, with the common bits mostly used, maybe a set of wire cutters and needle nose pliers, and sell it as a tech kit. But I have not found, I haven't really looked. I don't even know where to start because I'm very particular about the products I want to use, and those companies don't work with each other. And for me to buy all the products and put the kits together myself would make them very, very expensive, and then the cost to ship them on top of that. And yeah, you'd be essentially paying $100 for a tech kit worth $50 because I would have to mark it up. I'd have to buy shipping boxes. I would have to keep an inventory from numerous different sources. So I'm sure somebody would be better at that than me. Somebody could probably put that together and even potentially have a factory make everything to spec if there was enough demand for it. So I've floated around a number of ideas like that, but I'd much rather grow the channel organically. I'd like to see a badge. Do you have one you can hold up? No, they're all sold. They're all gone. I had a couple I was keeping for emergency spares in case somebody didn't get theirs or it got damaged. That did happen. And just by luck or coincidence, that wiped me out. So nobody was left wanting. They're gone, but I will get more. Alan says, Carrie, I mailed you a letter this morning. Very nice. Thank you, Alan. I'll look forward to receiving it. Does toner in a laser printer have issues if the printer sits for a period of time unused, like what happens in inkjet printer where the ink dries or gums up to the print heads? No. We run into that here a lot in Arizona, where people come out to Arizona, retired folks mainly. They spend their winter months here in Arizona and the summer months back east, so they can get out of the freezing cold temperatures for half of the year. And they often leave a printer here, and they find that those printers don't work. And they're buying the cheapest printers. You know, you buy a $50 inkjet printer. And I've explained to these people that if you don't use something for a long time, anything, it may not work when you go to use it. And I usually get a chuckle out of that, especially from the older folks. And if you buy a laser printer with toner, you'll never have that problem. You can park a laser printer for a year, turn it on, it should function and fire up just fine. You don't have to remove the toner cartridge, you don't have to do any maintenance. I know people that leave town and they take the ink out of their printer and they put it in a refrigerator. I don't know. Alan says he just sent a short personalized thank you for what you do for him. Well, thank you, Alan. You know, it's very thoughtful and it's very unusual today, so it's very special. I consider that very thoughtful. Not many people do that. And the ones who do it today are usually over 60 years old. That tells you something a little bit about society has become a little more entitled. So I recognize that and I appreciate it. Some people think that, getting back to the printers, some people think that a laser printer is too expensive. But if you're somebody who goes through a lot of ink, or you're somebody who can leave the printer sit for months at a time, or you're somebody who prints a lot, you will find over the course of ownership, a laser printer will cost you less. It will generally print faster. You won't be changing the cartridges often. Even color laser printers, where you've got 4 cartridges, you've got black, cyan, magenta, and yellow. I had a color laser for a while. They were $80 per toner cartridge. You needed 4 of them, but they all didn't run out at the same time. And then the initial cost of the printer at that time was about $250, and it came with a set of toner cartridges. They weren't full like any other, just like inkjet. You don't get a full-size inkjet cartridge with an inkjet printer. You get sort of a starter cartridge, and you don't have head maintenance issues, and overall quality is generally better on a laser printer than on an inkjet, and it will last for years and years and years and years and years. Versus an inkjet, which generally needs to be replaced every 2 to 3 years, and sometimes sooner than that. They are not worth fixing, and the ink, if you print a lot, will cost you far more than a laser printer ever would have. So it's that initial upfront cost that scares a lot of people. But you might find that the cost of ownership over time becomes less than that of a cheaper inkjet printer, without any of the frustration and time lost in productivity and diagnosing and repairing why your printer doesn't work. Maverick says, I want to thank you so much. I've learned and got the nerve to build computers because of your videos. That's awesome. 1-2 book on my shoe. I'm the new kid on the block at 49. Well, we're both 49. That's how old I am. Which printer brand do you recommend? Anything except HP. If it's not HP, I recommend it. Why is ink so expensive? Because they can. There's not a lot of profit margin in the computer world, and so it's like perfume or cologne. What makes perfume and cologne so expensive for such a little amount? And if you don't use it because you like it so much, you don't want to use it up, it evaporates and you don't have it left. They do it because they can. Colin, you didn't need to delete Brian's message. There was nothing wrong with that. Let's not be overly aggressive, admins, moderators, please. There's a difference between somebody swearing and challenging me to somebody just, sometimes, I'll tell you what happens, sometimes people are joking and they don't include a little winky face. It's very important that you do that because your intent may not be received as you intended. That's why emojis are so popular. And it implies whether or not you're being serious by leaving one out, or whether or not you're joking by putting a little winky in, or a smiley, a semicolon in a closed parenthesis, something to indicate tongue-in-cheek, because without it, you're making an assumption that your message is going to be interpreted the way you assumed, and a moderator could think that you meant what you said and then delete your message. And that can all be avoided with just 2 keystrokes, semicolon, smiley face. I don't want you to be misinterpreted. Colin continues to delete messages. I don't know why. I'm gonna ask you to stop. Colin, stop deleting messages, please, unless they contain curse words. Colin says, I've not deleted any. I keep seeing message deleted by Colin Hilton. I'm seeing it on several messages, so I'm not sure why I'm seeing it if you're not. YouTube chat is messed up. It's doing its own. Okay, my apologies, Colin, if you're not doing it. I apologize. It looks to me like you are, so. Your guys aren't going to see the deleted. I see them. That's the whole point of a deleted message. You're not supposed to see it. I have a whole video, somebody's asking me about RAID. I have a whole video explaining RAID. If you go to YouTube, search, type in the word Carrie Holzman with no space. Carrie Holzman, spell it right. Then put a space and put the word RAID, R-A-I-D, and the videos I have on that subject will come up so you can learn all about it. And that way I don't have to repeat myself. Yeah, it looks like YouTube is having an issue here. I don't know why. It's not just affecting Cullen, it's also affecting Rusty Shackelford and David Cribb. I don't know why. Rusty says, it may be fixed if you log out and log back in. It's been happening since this morning. It's all right. As long as people aren't doing it intentionally, we're good. I just want to make sure nobody's going a little crazy with their moderation power. Keith W. has provided you the link to the raid video. That was nice. Thank you, Keith. YouTube released a new algorithm today. Yeah, that sounds about right. That I believe. Carrie, did you turn slow mode on? Absolutely. I need an opportunity to be able to read what people are writing, and I want to prevent people from trolls specifically, or overeager fans from posting every thought impulsively with no consideration for other people. So write what you need to write, and you can wait 60 seconds, and you can write another message. Give other people an opportunity to chat. As the viewership continues to grow, and the chat continues to grow, which is a good thing, I like to see that. We also have to maintain civility, and I can't have one person monopolizing the entire chat because of their ADD or their lack of impulse control. So I want to give everybody a chance to be heard, and slow mode enables people to really think about what they want to say before they say it. Otherwise, they're going to have to wait 60 seconds before they can say the next thing, which forces them into having to think about it. So I really think that the people who want slow mode off are the people who need slow mode on, if that makes any sense. But more importantly, you know, even as you've seen me try and read some of these messages, they've scrolled off before I could finish reading them. That's with slow mode turned on. So imagine how much harder it would be for me to scroll back and find what I'm looking for as more and more messages keep getting posted. It makes it very difficult for me. I'm just regretful I haven't turned it on until now, because I sure could have used it in the past. Have you enabled automatically block spam? I've enabled blocking links unless they're posted by mods that they need approval. Mods can post links, but otherwise people should need to have approval for the link to be seen. I think that's how it works. Eric says, thank you for the bags that you sent to me. No idea what he's talking about. Is Carrie using OBS? Yes, I am. It's either this, I guess, or XSplit, and XSplit costs money, so OBS is free, and it's doing everything I need it to do very well, so I'm very happy with OBS at this time. But maybe ignorance is bliss, maybe XSplit is so much more powerful and I could do so much more, but then I have to relearn how to do stuff. So once I learn how to work OBS and I need a new challenge, maybe it'll be time to move to XSplit, but they update OBS fairly regularly. And when they update it, they often change things and have to relearn it again. So I'm pretty happy with the price I paid. Eric says, I meant the badge. Oh yes, a bag and a badge, yes. I'm glad you received your badge, and thank you for supporting the channel. I really appreciate that. What is your least favorite thing about your job? There's two things I don't like about being a computer tech. One is this unrealistic expectation that you're doing nothing but sitting by the phone waiting for it to ring. People will call you as though you have nothing else going on, and they expect you to drop everything you're doing to handle their problem. Or they tell you what the problem is. I had a customer contact me yesterday and said, I'm going to leave my computer on for you to access remotely, I need a new version of Word. We're having trouble with compatibility between my computer and the other office computer. That does not bode well with me. And I've got to be careful. It's a retainer client. I don't want to upset them or offend them. But what I responded was effectively, I need you to contact me while you're in the office, and you can demonstrate the problem to me and give me an opportunity to recommend the proper fix. I need to understand what the problem is you're experiencing, because you have explained nothing to me, and whether or not a new version of Office is required should be up to me to decide, not up to you. All versions of Office should be backwards compatible, and this conclusion that you've come to, this isn't all that I've said, but this is what's going through my mind. The conclusion that you've come to is what you pay me to do. You don't go to the doctor and say, I need you to prescribe me these pills. You go to the doctor, you explain what your symptoms are, the doctor will do some tests, the doctor will then prescribe a remedy. That's my job. Please, let me do my job. Don't diagnose your problem and tell me what your fix is. You're probably wrong. Not only that, but you're wasting my time. We could have had this fixed. If this person didn't wait to the end of the day to email me and say, I'm leaving right now, I'm going to leave my computer on. We're having problems with some documents we're opening being compatible between my computer and that computer, so please upgrade me. Upgrade you to what? And who's paying for it? She's not the boss. She can't make that decision. And what's the problem we're trying to fix? Chances are a new version of Office isn't going to fix it. This is a very frustrating. And so basically I wrote this email that said, when you're in the office and you have time to demonstrate the problem to me, please call me, we'll connect remotely, I'd like to see it, and give me an opportunity then to provide a remedy to that. Thank you, talk to you soon. That's how that message went. So that's number one. Number two is dealing with people who don't quite understand or comprehend limits of what a technician can do. So when somebody has had a computer stolen, I've had calls that said, remember when you had my computer in for repair 18 months ago, I guess? It's a client, the last time I heard from them was 18 months ago. You mentioned to me that you made an image of it because you changed out the hard drive? Yes, I did. Do you still have that image? Because my laptop was stolen, and I believe it was my neighbor who's got a problem with drive. And she goes on this whole thing about her neighbors just got out of jail. I don't care about any of this. I've got work to do, and I'm just being patient, and I'm okay? And I'm just, do you still have that image because it's got my data? I go, I held that image for 30 days, and then I freed it up to put somebody else's image on. I mean, if you paid me to store your image for you, certainly we could have discussed that, but no, I don't still have your image. I don't hold your data. Like she honestly thought that I would be holding her data for free indefinitely. Like, no, it's a temporary hard drive. I moved your data. Why erase it right away? What if the new drive I installed fails? Keep it for 30 days. If it goes beyond, it could be 45 days. Whenever I need the hard drive again, I write over it. That's all. Not a big deal. And I let people know that. I go, I got a copy of your data. If you don't want me to have it, let me know and I'll erase it right now. Otherwise, if you have a problem, and I tell them, within 30 days, if you have a problem, I can put your data back the way it was if the new drive fails. It's just a safety net. I don't charge anything for it. I mean, I got to put the data there anyway when I move the data. So why not just keep it for a few days or a couple weeks just to make life easier for everybody? So 18 months later, I get this sob story of how the laptop was stolen, the police won't help, she's got photos on there, she'll never get them back again, her son passed away. I'm sorry. It's terrible. There's nothing I can do to help you. Now I've become a psychologist, and I've got to listen to this person literally cry on the phone. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? If there was something I could do to help you, I would offer it. I don't know what to say. It's horrible. You don't deserve it. Without any copies, there's, you don't want to say you should have made backup. You got to, without copies. It's not. I wish I could wave a magic wand. I didn't say that, but I wish there was something I could do. But the unfortunate reality is, without copies, there's nothing to restore from. And it's sad because I want to help people. And I run into this at least twice a year. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an older person or a female. Females tend to be more emotional, but you run into a small office, someone who's running a business from their home, and they get encrypted with ransomware. And they want you to, and you haven't heard from this customer for over a year, and they don't have you on a retainer, and you go above and beyond to help them, and they come to expect it. Guy says, my business is down. It's gone. I mean, I can't do any work. I go pay the ransom. I don't have $500. It's going to cost you about $500 for me to fix it, and it's going to take quite a while before I'll have time. That's a big job to completely wipe your hard drive, reinstall your OS, reinstall your drivers, reinstall your software, reactivate everything, download all the updates again, install your printer, configure your email, and that's just going to get you back up and running. That's not going to put anything back. Pay the $500. I don't have it. The guy lives in a house 5 times bigger than mine. He probably pays HOA fees that are far more than my mortgage payment. Maybe not, but. And he's going to tell me a sob story about how hard his life is in his 5,000 square foot house in an exclusive area. What do you say to him? Some of the richest people I know, or that I've had to work with, have been some of the cheapest, most, would you do this for me, please? I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, why don't you just open up the vault and pay for it? You can't say that. It's hard to feel sympathy for somebody who's not a regular customer, who you have helped for free. I've answered some questions over the phone. What do I owe you? I'm not charging you for that. And then, he put his wife on the phone and said, can you tell her how to do this herself? She wants to do it herself. Can you tell her how? I don't have time to tutor you on how to reinstall an operating system and go through. No. I appreciate that you want to be self-sufficient, but part of being self-sufficient is doing the research and learning it. If you want me to hold your hand, it's going to take twice as long or 3 times as long, because everything has to be explained. And then when you do it once and you don't do it over and over, you're probably not even going to retain what I've told you. It's very tough. That's the part of the job really I don't like. I don't like people who take advantage and have no consideration for the value of my time, the value of my experience. Whatever you're doing, I can do it too. All right, do it. I never said you couldn't. I mean, I've only been doing it for close to 3 decades. I might be a little faster, but there's nothing I do you can't do. Go for it. Don't ask me to help you. I'm busy. People are paying me for my expertise. You don't want to do that. It's a tough place to be backed into. It's very uncomfortable. It's hard to not offend somebody. It's hard to be professional. And it's hard to get them off the phone because when you realize this phone call's going nowhere and I've already spent way too much time on this person, I struggle. God, that's such a struggle for me. Keith says, I'm getting too serious, lighten up. Well, they asked me, I'm just answering the question, what are the parts about the job I don't like? Kathleen says, Carrie, thank you. I appreciate your honesty and sense of humor. I wish I got off work earlier so I could see your live streams from the get-go. Well, they're always made available after the fact. You can always tune in a few hours. The whole entire broadcast will be there along with this chat. What about your worst client? We're not going to talk about worst clients. We're not going to do that. It's not professional. Well, at least you have your dogs to calm you down. I wouldn't say they calm me down, but they certainly make me feel appreciated. Especially if I have cookies. Did you name the build? I've just been calling it Thready. I think that's going to be the name that sticks. That's Thready. I feel like I need to have a tribute to Freddie Mercury somehow. I can't fit Mercury into the... If somebody can think of a pun or something that fits, I'd love to maybe make a little video with some music from Queen in it. But none of the Queen music seems appropriate either. Thready's ready. Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. Crazy little thing called Love, Freddie Mercury singing. And they go, get ready, ready, Freddie. Somebody says, I love dogs, but miss them when they pass. Well, that's the gift the dogs leave, is the knowing the difference of what life is like without them. Sometimes when a dog dies, it's the luckiest thing in the world to some dog you hopefully rescue from the pound, because that's the best cure. Mourn your lost dog, but don't mourn it too long. There's healthy puppies being put down every single day in shelters around the world. And the death of your dog could be the door that closed, could be the door that opened for some dog scheduled to be put down. That's certainly the case I've talked about with Lyle on numerous occasions. He was going to be put down that day, and they absolutely refused to adopt him out because he was too dangerous of a dog, if you can believe that. And with enough arguing and fighting, they relented, going up in management, and because the dog that we had before him died, and we were very sad about that, Lyle got to live. Think about that. Speaking of Freddie Mercury, will you go see the new movie? There's a movie called Bohemian Rhapsody coming out. It looks interesting. I don't know that I'll see it in the theater, but I'll certainly watch it digitally when it becomes available. Scotty says, I love you for saving that dog. It's doesn't matter, you know. You could hate me for saving it. It doesn't change how I feel about the dog. So, I mean, that's nice of you to say, but it makes no difference. Rescuing a dog is its own reward, and it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It's just wish you could rescue them all, you know. Are you ready for Solo? I haven't been so excited to see a movie in such a long time. It looks like, and I don't know, I don't have any evidence to this, but I'm predicting that the little tiny hints that we got in 1977, Han Solo says he did the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs or whatever it was. I think they're going to do that Kessel Run in this movie. There's a pair of dice, and you see them briefly, pair of dice hanging from what would be a rearview mirror in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. And you have to, it just briefly appears on screen for a second. And then in The Force Awakens, when Han and Chewie get the Falcon back, he puts the dice back up. And we know that he won the Millennium Falcon from Lando Calrissian in a game in Sabak. And I'm wondering if that game involves dice, and those are the dice that he tossed that won him that Falcon. That would be such a cool story. I'm probably setting myself up for disappointment. But if they wrote the story with that, and that's why those dice are there, I never thought of it until I started seeing, they're showing a little bit more in the trailers, and I thought, oh, I never thought of that before. Those could be very significant dice. So yeah, I'm ready for Solo, yeah. I'm so excited for that movie. It's my little escape from reality. Superman G says, I never noticed the dice. If you just go to YouTube and type in Millennium Falcon dice, you'll see people have clipped it out and stuck it in YouTube videos, so you don't have to search through the movie to find it. I think it's appeared, I know it appeared briefly, very briefly in the original Star Wars. It may have appeared in in Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi. I can't remember. I know for a fact it appeared, and they made a bigger deal out of it in Force Awakens. I'm a guy that's all about the details. You know, little details, oh, I'll just eat that up all day. Little things that nobody noticed. And Deadpool 2 also looks very, very good. In fact, I would say they're really the only two movies I'm looking forward to, and they're coming out a week apart. Deadpool 2 opens on the 18th, and Solo opens on the 25th, and after that, as far as I know, there's nothing coming out that I care to see in the movie theater. Jurassic World or whatever, they're all just kind of boring. If I was a teenager, I'd probably think it was cool, but at this point now, the stories are predictable. I feel like I've seen it all before. It doesn't feel fresh or new. It's enjoyable to watch, but not for $11 a ticket. A digital download, you know, Netflix, something like that. Watching it on a big screen TV will be fine. Somebody said John Williams wrote the music for Solo. The music in Solo doesn't sound like John Williams. It sounds more rock and roll. It sounds more edgy. I assumed that was not John Williams. It's like electric guitars, solo guitars, not to make a pun, at least in the trailers. And it gives it a really cool factor to it. You know, the story's supposed to be, I mean, it depends on, they say they threw out all the Star Wars canon from books and comic books, but there's a sort of a similar story with Finn, how he was a stormtrooper who regretted it. It was supposed to be a story of Han Solo working for the Empire and then regretting it and sort of becoming AWOL and working as a smuggler because he's on the planet. I think he's on Corellia, right? Corellia? Because he's Corellian. And he's smuggling and doing things because the Empire is occupied it. And so the story is, according to the books, that he became a stormtrooper. He didn't like it, saw what the Empire was doing, and started working against them. There's very much a Nazi World War II feel to it, and, you know, occupying Poland and people harboring Jews, you know, to save them from death camps. It feels very similar to that. And Star Wars always had, the original Star Wars always had that sort of undertone to it. It'd be very interesting how they tell the story. Again, I'm very much looking forward to it. I wasn't quite sure what to expect. Wasn't holding hopes up very much based on the movies that have come out. They haven't been terrible, but they haven't been great. And I didn't like the actors they picked. I don't think Donald Glover looks anything at all like Lando Calrissian, or the guy whose name I can't pronounce, who's playing Han Solo. But to see him play it, at times, it feels like he's got that body language down and the attitude. But at other times, in the trailers, it feels like he's somebody else. We'll see how believable he is on screen, but I will say that seeing the latest trailer has raised my hope more than any other Star Wars movie ever. So I'm either going to really enjoy it, or I am going to regret looking forward to it. You know, it's a bigger fall when you're disappointed. I'd rather go in thinking it's going to be crap and be surprised than to go in thinking it's going to be great and be disappointed. Glover is a very good actor. I don't care if he's a good actor. I care that he looks like and acts like Billy D. Williams. And he doesn't. In the trailers, he doesn't give off the sense of Billy D. Williams at all. The other actor gives off a sense that he's Han Solo in about half of the scenes, and in about the other half of the scenes, he doesn't. But it may be out of context. It may be seeing it as a whole. It'll all fit really well together. Are you going to queue up at the movies again? Of course, yeah. You know, that's pretty common. It's very important for me to get a good seat. Where I sit in the theater is important. So I will get to the movie extra early to ensure that I get a good seat. If I didn't care where I sat, I could show up 10 minutes and I could show up right as the trailers are playing, right at showtime, and go sit up front or on the sides. But no, I stand in line for at least an hour because I want to get the most center position for the best audio and visual. It's very important to me. I'm a bit of an audiophile, and what's the point if you're not going to get the best seat in the house? If you're not going to have optimal seats anyway? What's the point? I mean, televisions at home are so big now. I don't have to deal with sticky floors and overpriced concessions and people using cell phones and babies crying. There's certainly an appeal to staying at home. In Denmark, we book our seats in the movies. There are theaters here where you can do that. There's theaters here where you can order drinks and food and have it brought to your table, just like a restaurant. I haven't been to one. What is your favorite James Bond movie? Ooh. Nothing that, I can tell you the ones that aren't my favorites. I don't like any of the Sean Connery. I know I'm going to blaspheme. A lot of people aren't going to like that. Sean Connery wasn't my Bond. Roger Moore was my Bond. The guy who came after him, Timothy Dalton, horrible. He's the Peter Davison of James Bonds. Now I've offended two groups. You don't like what I like. I'm unsubscribing. I like Daniel Craig. I think he does a great job. I was skeptical. I didn't think he would, but he's impressed me. The storylines are a bit complicated and hard to follow. In general, I like the Mission Impossible movies better. But when Moonraker came out, as stupid as it is to watch it today, I really liked it. And A View to a Kill with the song by Duran Duran and Roger Moore, and that opening skiing, dodging bullets, going off the edge of a cliff, opening up his parachute, into a submarine, into a bed with a woman, and then the credits start, you know. Oh my God, what an epic start to a movie. But it looks hokey today. But at the time when it was released, it left an impression on me. What's the best cooling for Threadripper? I think this Enermax 360 radiator, I think that's the best cooler there is. I could be wrong. It's the only one I tried. But based on the research I did online, that seemed to be a common conclusion many people came to. Other coolers were adequate, but I don't think any cooler beat this cooler. What about Avatar? Yeah, I loved Avatar. I love everything James Cameron does. There's certain actors and directors that very rarely let me down. Michael Douglas has made wonderful, wonderful films. If you ever saw the movie The Game, what a mind bender that was. A lot of movies that Michael Douglas does, any movies James Cameron does, movies Steven Spielberg directs. There's just certain people, everything they touch is gold. And James Cameron's one of those guys. I can't think of a James Cameron movie that I hated. I didn't care for The Abyss, but it wasn't terrible. Yeah, Falling Down, the movie with Michael Douglas, wasn't one of my favorites. But it also wasn't something I got up and walked out of either. Michael Douglas was also in Ant-Man, that's right, he was. Not exactly a memorable performance. It wasn't a very challenging performance. Have you seen Lord of the Rings? I tried to read the Lord of the Rings books when I was a teenager because everybody talked about how wonderful they were. My mom was also into that too, and the Hobbits. I just am not into fantasy. I like sci-fi, but I don't like fantasy. I don't care for Game of Thrones or dragons or magicians. I just don't like that because it seems like very lazy writing that somebody can wave a wand and say a spell and do something they've never done before. Like, why didn't you do that in the very beginning if you could do that? It's like Doctor Who and his sonic screwdriver. It just does things it never did before. That just is lazy writing to me. That said, because I'm a nerd and other nerds are so much into Lord of the Rings, I was sort of obligated to watch it. Same is true with Blade Runner, same is true with Buckaroo Banzai. They're just boring, stupid. But I will say this about Lord of the Rings. It's beautiful. The sets, the costumes, the acting, the lighting, the directing, the cinematography is gorgeous to look at. My biggest concern about Lord of the Rings, it's a very linear story. It's just going from point A to point B to point C to point D to point E. I like Back to the Future, where we're simultaneously in A and D and F and B over here, and then at the end it all comes together. That's what I am drawn to. I like to see a bunch of different stories being told that all wind together. And I felt like, well, Lord of the Rings had different stories. They were all on the same time, happening simultaneously with the same mission and the same goal. And it just felt very linear. I don't know any other way to explain it. It just felt like a road that had no turns. It's just a straight road, nothing interesting, nothing surprising, no twists, just psh. And you'd see things that were amazing, talking trees and how well that was done, and costumes and acting, and some funny moments. Where's the chips? So what I did was I didn't see any of those Lord of the Rings movies in the theater, and I didn't watch them when they became available digitally. I waited until all the extended versions were released, and I watched about a half an hour a night for about 10 days, 2 weeks, until I got through all of them. Because I didn't want to wait too long between movies so I could understand who was who and why, what motivations were. And I'm glad I watched it. I could take a half an hour at a time. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous movie. At least when you pay your ticket price, you see the money on the screen. You know, it's not like you see a buddy cop movie that costs a fraction of the price, and yet it's the same movie ticket price to get in and see it. I really felt like you could see the money you spent for admission on that screen. And I appreciate that. I like those details. Do you like The Matrix? I had no interest in The Matrix. I thought it looked pretty stupid, but then I saw it on DVD and I regretted not seeing it in the theater. That introduced, that would be second to Star Wars as far as blowing my mind with new ideas that I'd never conceived of. And, you know, Star Wars introduced things with no explanation. There was no explanation about what a droid was, or what a land speeder was, or what a lightsaber was, other than it's an elegant weapon of a past time. You know, there was just, this is the world, we all live in it, and you're just being thrown into it, and you have to figure out what everybody else is taking for granted. That was such a new concept to me. And The Matrix introduced very similar concepts about philosophy, life, you know, reality, and special effects. It was very much, in my lifetime, I've only seen 2 movies introduce new ideas to that level. The first one was Star Wars, and the second one was The Matrix. And I so regret not having seen The Matrix on the big screen. Big, big regret. Star Wars is more fantasy that happens to be in space. There's no dragons in Star Wars. There's no magicians casting spells. You have the Force, and the Force is explained as an energy that is around us. It surrounds us. I don't want to quote the movie because I can't, but it's, some people are more in tune to that energy, and I've certainly been around people who seem to be more in tune with the energy around them. So there's a very new age concept involved there that's not magical. Some people are into chakras and chi, and who am I to say if that's real or not? I don't know. But I will say that the way it was presented in Star Wars was logical and reasonable to me, in my mind. I totally bought it. Now, when they explain midi-chlorians and all this other nonsense, no. They just threw all that in the trash. That was just dumb. Absolutely dumb. Just some people were more in tune than others with the nature around them. So I did not consider that fantasy. Nobody's stepping out into space without a spacesuit. You know, you're going to die. So there are rules in the Star Wars universe that can't be broken, just like in real life. And when you define those rules, you have to stay within them. You don't get to cast a spell that magically makes everything better, that you never talked about or mentioned the capabilities of or potential of ever. Harry Potter does that. All these movies with, you know, like Twilight does that. It's not, doesn't do it for me. I like rules. Did you like the movie Hacker in 1995? Was that with Robert Redford? No, that was Sneakers. In general, I haven't liked any movies about computers. They're all bad. Have I read The Traveler books by John Twelvehawk? Never heard of it. How do you feel about AI bringing people back from the dead? It's an illusion they're bringing people back from the dead. People are still dead. If you can store their consciousness and be able to have a conversation with the kind of response they would be most likely to have, or an attitude that's not that person, it's a program written to emulate a person's behavior, but that person's still dead and they don't know what's going on and there's no consciousness. I suppose it can be entertaining, but if somebody is like Stephen Hawking, if you could harness the power of their brain and write AI to continue his math and thought and theories and experiment with them, there's a potential there for significant advancements in science and discovery, because unfortunately, you know, when people die, they take their knowledge with them, and so we all have to start at the same place. Wouldn't it be great if when somebody dies, all their knowledge and experience could be passed on to somebody else, and they could start life at a much higher point and evolve faster? I don't think we're ever going to see that. But to do it through artificial intelligence, that holds some interesting promise for science and discovery. Spaceballs is another one movie I just thought was stupid. I know my sister loves that movie. She quotes it. I'm like, really? I've tried rewatching it. It's just so horrible. It feels like I could have wrote that movie. And I like Mel Brooks. I just felt it was lazy. Didn't really introduce any new ideas. It just was exaggerating everything to a point of satire. It was very predictable. I didn't really laugh out loud at any of it. It was amusing. It was amusing. But I don't think it was great. Christopher Nolan, someone's asking me about Inception. Christopher Nolan's a great director, and how anybody can translate the thought process of Inception or Interstellar, how they can convey these very complex ideas into a 2.5 hour movie. I couldn't do that. I can't place simple thoughts that I'm trying to share in a 3-hour video. I don't know how he is able to reduce the time and still convey these concepts. And they can be very hard to follow. Movies like that, you can watch it several times and still be like, you know, I didn't catch that the first time. I didn't realize that. It's one of my favorite movies. In fact, I was watching it the other day, and I mentioned it the other day, Fifth Element with Bruce Willis. Luc Besson, I mean, I like everything he does. And Valerian was a bit of a letdown, but visually beautiful. The original Transporter movie, loved it. The sequels, not so much. When Luc Besson makes a movie, I will see it. Rocky Horror Picture Show, again, being a nerd, going to the sci-fi conventions, it was sort of a must to be able to engage in people with conversation, to understand it. But I don't get it. I don't get the appeal of it. I don't know what people like about it. It goes over my head. I'll join in the midnight movie and audience participation and watch it. I'll be a spectator, but I don't get what the appeal is. It just goes over my head. The Last Starfighter was amazing when it came out in, was it 84? Never saw CGI like that in a movie. It was very expensive and never saw that. And the idea that, you know, we were in the arcade playing games, the idea that that could be a recruitment utility to find good potential starfighter pilots. What a neat idea, especially to the mind of a 15-year-old, you know. Monty Python, I love. DC or Marvel? I certainly like Marvel. It's much more believable than DC. I have not been able to sit through the latest Spider-Man movie. I have not been able to sit through Wonder Woman. And Justice League was painful. It's cardboard acting, horrible special effects, just totally unbelievable. Ridiculous jumps and stunts that no one could ever do. I mean, Batman's supposed to be an ordinary guy with just armor plating and, you know, he's got money. And yet, you know, Superman can throw him half a mile against a wall and it doesn't crush his internal organs. No. And I will say, you know, Christopher Nolan, when he did Batman, those were the only DC movies I've ever liked. They were done so differently and they were dark and they were realistic. Zack Snyder's making it like a living comic book and I just don't care for that. Someone's talking about Telly Savalas. Wow. I remember seeing him and a lot of other celebrities in old black and white Twilight Zone episodes. I love Rod Serling and those original Twilight Zones. I could never get enough of those. The Orville by Seth MacFarlane. The first two episodes of The Orville I thought were horrible. This thing was a disaster. And then suddenly it got really, really good. And then I'm disappointed that the season's over. I can't wait. It's become one of my favorite shows. The political drama that they've created and the social discussion about, you know, it seems on par with the way our culture is now, but putting it in space and in the future, very genius. I didn't see that coming. It really looked stupid, the first two episodes. So they seemed like they went a little bit away from the humor after episode 2, because the humor was falling flat. One of my favorite episodes in The Orville is they start out with they're all in a cantina and they're singing karaoke because you're on a spaceship and you got time off. What do you do? And, you know, the guy that's got no emotion is going to go up and sing My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion. Oh, wow. That was hilarious. And what a great way to start. That whole show, that whole episode was one of my favorites. It started with a bang and it just kept that momentum all the way through. So I think they found the groove. Cyberpunk or steampunk. I like them both, but I would put cyberpunk above steampunk, for me personally. Grumpy Old Men 1 and 2 were the best. I did enjoy Grumpy Old Men. Yeah, those were good movies. Have you seen Cloud Atlas? Yeah, you know, there's an idea of a big concept like Christopher Nolan. I think Christopher Nolan could have pulled off Cloud Atlas better than the Wachowski brothers or sisters, whatever they are now. Whatever they did was a mess. They also ruined Speed Racer, completely ruined it. They're sort of like the Wachowskis are sort of like M. Night Shyamalan, whatever his name is. You get one hit, and the rest is crap. Same with what's his name? Arlen Emmerich, guy who did Stargate. Great movie. So I'm told. I still haven't really been able to watch it. I like, what's his name? James, I can't think of his name, from Blacklist, Spader. But every movie he makes is all special effects and big name actors and horrible, stupid stories. Just horrible, nonsensical, lazy writing and huge budget special effects. Just horrible. I don't know how this guy keeps getting funding for movies. I don't get it. The IT crowd. Yes, if you're into tech and you have not seen a British comedy called The IT Crowd by a guy named Graham Linehan, especially if you've ever worked in IT, it is hilarious. They don't have many episodes. British seasons are very short, or they call them series. They're very short, but oh man, what a great show. I mean, that and Black Books and 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps. Right now, Plebs is one of my favorite shows, and I still like to watch a lot of British television. Britain's Got Talent is currently on, much better than America's Got Talent, much, much better. If you go to YouTube and you want to see some, if you're American and you've never seen Britain's Got Talent, type in BGT 2018. So BGT is short for Britain's Got Talent, space, and then this year, 2018, and look at the acts. They are just far superior in every way to the American version, in my opinion. But maybe I'm an Anglophile. Well, there may be no maybe about it. Yeah, there's an episode of the IT Crowd where they encounter they don't realize they've stumbled upon a bomb robot. And they don't realize they've walked into a cordoned off area as the bomb robot is approaching the package. And they kind of glance over and see there's a whole crowd staring at them. And they're like, what's the big deal? And they're like, well, you're, right in front of a potential bomb. We don't know what's in that package. And the bomb robot stops working. And the first question he says is, well, I can help. I'm a tech. What operating system is it running? And he says, Vista. And he goes, oh, we're all going to die. Blacklist I don't like. Blacklist is too, oh, look, there's this hard to find guy and we got him. And next week it's the same thing, 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 and next week it's the same thing. Done with that. Guardians of the Galaxy is a fantastic movie. Loved it. I was so happy. One of my favorite songs, it always puts me in a good mood, is Mr. Blue Sky by ELO. So you can imagine what my reaction was when the movie basically opens with that song. And one of my other favorite scenes is at the very end of Guardians of the Galaxy when little baby Groot is dancing every time, what's his face, Dave Bautista, I can't think of his name, every time he looks at him, he freezes. And my wife and I like that. I got her a little flower pot with a dancing Groot. So imagine how happy I was when the first 5 minutes of the new movie opens with teenager Groot, earphones in, oblivious to everything around him, jamming out to ELO's Mr. Blue Sky in full Dolby digital sound on a big screen, perfect center seats. I was like, I'm gonna like this movie. Yeah, it started off really, really well, and it went through. It was a good movie all the way through, but I couldn't have written a better opening. It's just a happy song. Doc Martin was very funny. Doc Martin, for people in the US, sort of like House, if you remember House. You got a guy who's kind of grumpy and can solve weird medical problems like they're nothing. And even people who don't have medical problems, he'll tell them you have a medical problem and you better get it checked out. Well, he's doing something else. But I feel like I've seen it all before in the American version of Doc Martin we called House. To me, that's how I see it. Was the HAL fixing scene in 2001: A Space Odyssey an inspiration? I did really like 2001: A Space Odyssey. You got to be in the right mood to see it. It's very realistic as far as there's no sound in space. It's very lonely. It's a very moody movie, much like Blade Runner. You know, if you take the letters IBM, what's the letter that comes before I? What's the letter that comes before B? What's the letter that comes before M? Think about it. Did you see Red Dwarf? Yes, and it's just stupid. It was just stupid. Same with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Just dumb. I read all the books, and they work well in book form, but to work in movie form, they have to be completely rewritten. You got to get rid of all the narration and all the explanations about Vogons and poetry, and you have to tell the story completely different from the book. It has to be sort of founded on the book. And those movies fell flat for me, whether it was the miniseries on the BBC or the movie that came out in '05 with Alan Rickman and, you know, those guys. Was it Sam Rockwell? It just, it's very dry, very, very dry. Don't say you hate Sherlock or Prison Break. Never saw Prison Break. I've seen one episode of Sherlock. It's okay. I'm not really motivated to see any more of it. Did you watch Cybergeddon web series, which was paid for by Cement? I've never heard of it. Have you seen Blackadder? I was not a fan of Blackadder until Tom Baker appeared as Redbeard, and I loved it. But subsequent episodes, not so much. I much like Mr. Bean a lot better. When you can communicate without using words, like Gary Larson did with the Far Side single panel comic, when you can tell a story with just a photo or in your actions with no words, that's a talent I admire. And so Mr. Bean did that very, very well. You can actually look at, there's a funny video of Rowan Atkinson, and I want to say it was for Red Nose Day. It was for a charity event, and they had the orchestra that did the song for Chariots of Fire, and they're playing. What was the name of the group? Can't think of the name of the group. Anyway, Chariots of Fire, and there's a whole orchestra there, and they bring on Rowan Atkinson, sort of as like a Mr. Bean character, to participate playing one of the instruments. And it is hilarious. And this is a very serious, uptight British, everybody's in tuxedos. This is a very serious rendition by the orchestra and the conductor, and we're going to play Chariots of Fire. Everybody tap, 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 and your instruments, raise your instruments, and here we go. And Rowan, I don't want to ruin it for you. You can Google, you can go on YouTube and search it, and it's hilarious. Have you ever seen Red Green? Yeah, Red Green is a Canadian show, sort of a Tim Allen's Home Improvement. The guy's very incompetent. It's very family friendly. It's very clean. It's very corny. And in the right mood, it's very enjoyable. Vangelis, that's the name I was looking for. Thank you, 66E Doug. Someone's asking me what I thought of Breaking Bad. I don't like depressing stories. So I started to watch the first episode of Breaking Bad and turned it off after 15 minutes. And I was convinced that if you stay with it, it gets better. So I watched the first episode and it was worse. It got more depressing and more desperate and pathetic. Stay with it. Watched episode 2 and it even dug deeper and darker and more depressing. I said, I can't watch this. I'm done. I finished the first 2 episodes, and I'm never going back to it. When I watch a movie, I want to be uplifted. I want my spirit lifted. I don't need to see somebody going down an irreversible path to their own destruction. I don't want to pay money. I can see that every day. I can see the homeless people. I can see the news. I don't find that as a form of entertainment. In general, what they call dark comedy, and I have no interest in that. I don't find anything funny about tragedies. People think Something About Mary was one of the funniest movies, and I was horrified at imagining being in that person's shoes and that happening. And while it's funny to watch, I guess I have too much empathy. I can't see it from a spectator. I see it from the person that's being affected by it. It's painful. It's very painful to watch. For me. Who's my favorite comedian? Right now, Lewis Black and Sebastian Maniscalco. And I'm going to throw in Brad Williams. If you've never seen Brad Williams, he's a midget, a dwarf, a little person, whatever the term is that people like to be called. And he is not shy about talking about that. And he is hilarious. He's relatable. If you've never seen Brad Williams, or for that matter, if you've never seen Sebastian Maniscalco, I think most people have heard of Lewis Black. The Big Bang Theory, I enjoy The Big Bang Theory. It's getting a little running its course, but I like Sheldon, I like Leonard. They're all very, very relatable at times. It's a little over the top. It's a little exaggerated. Well, it's very much exaggerated, but I watch it with loyalty. Jaws had me out of the water for at least a year. I saw Jaws with my parents at a drive-in movie theater back in Detroit. I don't know what they were thinking, taking a 6 or 7-year-old to that movie. And I remember, I want to say, Silver Streak, jokes my folks never told me, which was dirty. You know, to a 7-year-old's mind, it was a very dirty movie. It was awkward to see this with your parents. Full Metal Jacket. Again, when you talk about apocalypse now, Full Metal Jacket, anything dealing with Vietnam is very depressing. You rarely walk out of a movie about war feeling pumped up. Whereas, you know, you leave a movie like Rocky and you're like, yeah, you know. That's the kind of movie I'm drawn to. Something inspirational and inspiring. You want to see the underdog win. Vietnam movies are very, very depressing. Even Good Morning Vietnam, with the comedy, it was still a depressing movie. The Longest Yard. You know, Bruce Willis in sports movies. I'm not a sports guy, so I saw it. Or am I confusing that with a different, was that The Whole 9 Yards? I don't remember now. I guess MASH isn't his cup of tea either. Yeah, not so much. Not so much. Mork and Mindy, yes, I like Mork and Mindy. Nanu Nanu. Father Ted, my sister's into Father Ted. I can't get into it. My sister also likes Friday Night Dinner. I liked An Idiot Abroad. That was pretty funny. I liked the modern Monty Python, which was David Walliams and Matt Lucas doing, and Tom Baker was the narrator. What was it called? Something Britain. If you like Monty Python, Come on, chat room, help me out. What am I thinking of? Little Britain. Little Britain. If you've never seen Little Britain, oh my God. It's the second best thing to Monty Python. It could have been called Monty Python, The Next Generation. That would have been an appropriate title. Shows, these television shows that were these corny 70s shows, Dukes of Hazzard, Hogan's Heroes, Addams Family, The Munsters, Lost in Space, UFO. These were shows I watched, The Brady Bunch, because I was home from school and they were just on reruns. Three's Company, Empty Nest, I guess that might have been the 80s. Soap. Grew up watching these shows, but you didn't have a lot to choose from back then, you know? And there wasn't an internet and there wasn't much to do and everything cost a lot of money and the economy was, money was very, very tight. Good Times, yeah. Jeffersons, the A-Team. I never got into the A-Team. Did I like the King of Queens? I caught the King of Queens towards the end and really enjoyed it. Same with, Craig Ferguson had a great talk show that I watched the last 6 months of. And I loved how different and how much he just didn't care. And it was so refreshing. And I so regret missing 10 years of that show. He was a fantastic host, unlike any other talk show I've ever seen. Watched the Max Headroom television show, the Max Headroom talk show that was on Cinemax or Showtime. That was interesting how they did live interviews where Max Headroom was the host and would bring people on. A big fan of Matt Frewer. If Matt Frewer does anything, I love it. I'm a big fan of Christopher Lloyd. You know, they just had Christopher Lloyd on the Big Bang Theory. Talk about being in heaven. Miami Vice I couldn't get into. Sanford and Son I watched a lot of. Golden Girls, I watched a lot of that. Married with Children was a very, very racy show. Only Fools and Horses was before my time, so that was the 70s in Britain, and there wasn't an internet and a way to get that. So when I see it now, because people speak very highly of it, I think it's really dumb and corny and stupid, but sometimes it's, when you're there in the moment, it leaves a lasting memory on you, an impression that if you weren't there at that time, you just don't get it. That's my theory. Yeah, Roseanne, WKRP, Elf, I watched all those shows, yeah. All in the Family, absolutely. 227 with Jack A, yeah. Mr. Ed, my mother liked, I never liked it. Chips, I never liked that show, never got into it. But there was a show called Emergency or Emergency One. I used to really like that show. Funniest British show of all time was Fawlty Towers. See, now I've watched Fawlty Towers and I didn't think it was that funny. It's okay. I mean, anything that's got John Cleese in it automatically is okay in my book, like Fish Called Wanda. But I would still say that he's done much better stuff. Emergency Adam 12, was that what it was? I don't know. It was a good show. I also liked L.A. Law and Ally McBeal and Boston Legal, Picket Fences. Of course, we're getting a little later on in time. Men in Black, I really enjoyed the first Men in Black movie. It was unique, it was original. I love the end, I love the comedy, I love I was really hoping that Ryan Reynolds' R.I.P.D. would have been sort of a revised version, but it turned out to just be horrible in every aspect. Have I seen Roseanne's new show? Yes, love it. I mean, the acting's a little tough, but the storylines are fantastic, the comedy's good, it's relatable. It's not often you see on TV a family, honestly, appears to be struggling to make ends meet. It feels very much like the way I grew up. My mother was very much like Roseanne. My mother was somebody who said it like it was, and she was always right, no matter what. So I was watching Roseanne the other day with my wife, and I'm like, is that my mom? And she's like, yeah, that's your mom. So if you wonder why I'm so direct, that's how I was raised. SWAT. I used to love, there's two theme songs I could never get out of my head as a kid. One is SWAT and the other is Mission Impossible. So SWAT was da-na-na, 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 da-da-da, da-da. And then Mission Impossible, of course, we all know the theme for Mission Impossible. And what's the other one I'm thinking? Oh, the Monkees. I watched a lot of the Monkees and some of the Beatles cartoons. Some of the shows at that time I didn't get into would be like Rockford Files. Those were a little more too adult at that time for me to have any interest in. And whew, that air conditioner is going to have to be fixed. See, even when I get a break, I got to go back to fixing something. Yeah, my dad liked Columbo and Murder, She Wrote. I never got into that stuff. Hill Street Blues, never got into that. Chicago Blue or whatever it was. Changed the filter. Oh no, it's got a brand new electrostatic filter. It's not the filter, it's the condenser fan motor. Did you ever watch NIS? You mean NCIS? I watched some NCIS. I liked the girl they just let go. Polly Perrette, what's her name? And Mark Harmon. You know, I watched a movie in the 80s called Summer School. That was my introduction to Mark Harmon. I didn't know who he was and why people were making a big deal about it. And it was neat to see him still acting and doing a good job acting. Smallville I could never get into. Dallas, never got into those sort of daytime soap operas. Dynasty, Dallas, those things, no. Firefly, I absolutely loved Firefly. Joss Whedon is another guy. It seems like he can do no wrong. Put him on the list with Steven Spielberg and James Cameron. And it's a shame I don't see anything from him. There was a show briefly on TV called Fast Lane by a director named McG, M-C-G. God, I love that show. But it cost so much money to make it, they just couldn't financially afford to keep it on based on the number of viewers it had. But it was filmed like a movie. I thought, the first time I saw it, I thought, what movie is this? That's how well it was made. Tiffany Amber Thiessen, was it Paul Bettany? And who's the other guy? Gosh darn it, now I'm gonna have to look it up. Can't think of his name. Oh, not Paul Bettany, Peter Facelli and Bill Bellamy. That's who I was thinking of, Bill Bellamy. Because Bill Bellamy is pretty popular now. I wonder why I'm thinking of, why was I thinking of the other guy? You know, A Knight's Tale. If you guys have never seen Heath Ledger and Paul Bettany and Mark Adder, what a great movie, great soundtrack, so different from anything else. I love different. Or I hate it. Different doesn't always work. Did you watch Westerns? No, I never got into Westerns. My grandmother was really into Westerns. I never cared for Westerns. Yeah, Westerns and mafia movies don't really care about. Casino or Godfather. I have no interest in those movies. The new Twilight Zone is Black Mirror. Absolutely true. Fantastic show, Black Mirror. If you like the Twilight Zone, you'll like Black Mirror. All right, guys, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We're running a bit late here. You just enjoy talking about this stuff that doesn't matter. So I want to remind you all. So tomorrow about somewhere between 4 and 5 Pacific time, we're going to get started. My sister will join me, and we're going to do the drunk tech support video, and we're going to take calls from people and give them ridiculous, horrible advice because we can. And it's all done to just have fun and have a laugh. It's Not done very often on my channel because I like to keep everything practical and sane. But every once in a while, we just like to do something completely different. As Monty Python would say, now it's time for something completely different. So we're going to go with free, drunk technical support live. And we'll see who's funnier, me or my sister. You be the judge. I hope you'll join us. I hope you'll participate. Think of your questions now. Remember, technical support questions, they don't have to be real, or they can be, but the advice will definitely be bad. That's what I promise you. Some of the worst technical advice you will ever get. So I hope you'll join us. And thank you all for joining me today, and I'll see you all again tomorrow. Until then, bye for now.